Have you ever felt stuck in life? Like no matter how hard you try, you keep running into the same problems, the same self-doubt, the same invisible wall holding you back. Maybe you've tried changing your habits, setting big goals, even pushing yourself harder, but something still feels off. One setback and you spiral. One rejection and you start questioning yourself. One tough moment and your motivation vanishes. It's frustrating, isn't it? Now, let me ask you this. What if the problem was never you, but the way you've been trained to think? Because here's the truth no one tells you. Most people are trapped in a fixed mindset, and they don't even know it. They believe their abilities are set in stone. They see failure as proof they aren't good enough. They crave approval, but deep down, they fear they'll never measure up. And because of this, they stay small. They avoid risks, dodge challenges, and never tap into their true potential. But you're different. You're here because a part of you knows there's more. You want to build an unshakable mind, one that doesn't crumble under pressure. You want to become the kind of person who thrives in setbacks instead of being crushed by them. You want to be free from self-doubt, from fear, from the invisible limits that have held you back for so long. And that's exactly why you're about to discover the most powerful mindset shift in human history. 2,000 years ago, the Stoics figured something out, something that modern psychology is only now starting to understand. They knew that your mind is like a muscle, and just like a muscle, it can be trained, strengthened, and rewired. They understood that failure isn't the enemy. It's the doorway to mastery. That discomfort isn't something to avoid. It's fuel for growth. That the opinions of others are nothing compared to the power of self-mastery. And this wasn't just theory for them. These were the mental tools used by warriors before battle, emperors in times of crisis, and philosophers in the face of death. Marcus Aurelius used them to rule Rome with wisdom and discipline. Epictetus used them to turn slavery into strength. Seneca used them to transform suffering into success. And now, you're about to use them to change your life. This isn't just another book about motivation. This isn't about positive thinking or empty self-help advice. This is about rewiring your mind at its core. By the time you finish this book, you will handle failure like a Stoic warrior instead of letting it break you. Stop overthinking and start acting boldly without the fear of what others think. Develop resilience so powerful that setbacks won't shake you, they'll sharpen you. Detach from approval and find true confidence without needing validation from anyone. Turn discomfort into fuel so that the things that once scared you become stepping stones. And most importantly, you will never see yourself the same way again. So, if you're tired of feeling stuck, if you're ready to break free from the limits you didn't even realize were holding you back, if you want to develop a mind so strong, so unshakable, that nothing can break you, then turn the page, because your transformation starts right now. Before diving into how to build a powerful mindset, one thing must be clear. The way you think right now, your beliefs about success, failure, and challenges has been shaped over years by experiences, education, and the influence of others. Every time you were told you weren't good enough, every moment of doubt, every comparison that made you feel less than someone else, all of it has built the mental framework you operate from today. But what if that framework is flawed? What if the reason you feel stuck, the reason setbacks feel so personal, the reason some challenges seem impossible, isn't because of who you are, but because of the way you were conditioned to think? There is a reason some people face hardships and become stronger, while others break under the same weight. It's not luck, intelligence, or natural ability. It's the way they process reality. It's how they interpret struggle. It's the philosophy they use to navigate life. For over 2,000 years, Stoicism has provided people with an unbreakable mental foundation. It has turned slaves into philosophers, rulers into wise leaders, and everyday people into individuals who stand tall in the face of adversity. The world has changed since then, but the nature of human challenges has not. People still fear failure, crave approval, get crushed by criticism, and lose themselves in the chase for comfort. This is why Stoicism remains just as powerful today. It offers something most people lack: a system to develop true mental resilience, one that does not depend on external circumstances. The world will never be predictable. Life will not always go as planned. People will disappoint you. Effort will not always yield instant results. But the person who builds an unshakable mind does not fear these things. They accept them, prepare for them, and master their own reactions to them. This is the foundation of a Stoic growth mindset. It is the ability to see obstacles not as punishment, but as the price of growth. It is the discipline to act wisely, even when emotions push for reckless reactions. It's the awareness to recognize that the only thing ever truly in your control is your own mind. This is the key to unshakable confidence. Without it, life feels unpredictable, and every challenge feels personal. With it, setbacks become stepping stones, rejections lose their sting, and growth becomes a way of life instead of a temporary phase. Building this mindset is not about memorizing quotes or acting like emotions do not exist. It is about reprogramming the way you respond to life itself. The principles you are about to learn are not abstract theories. They are practical tools that will help you face challenges with clarity and confidence. Every challenge, every moment of struggle, and every failure carries hidden wisdom. Most people never see it because they are too focused on what went wrong, but a mind trained in Stoic principles extracts lessons from everything, refines itself through discomfort, and becomes stronger with every test. Resilience is not something you are born with, it is something you build. This is how. Every person is born with the ability to think, but few people develop the ability to think well. The majority go through life on autopilot, reacting impulsively, forming beliefs based on fear, and absorbing the opinions of others without question. They are ruled by emotions instead of being the ones in control. Stoicism teaches that your thoughts shape your reality, not in a mystical sense, but in the way they filter your experiences. Two people can go through the same failure, yet one will rise stronger while the other will spiral into self-doubt. The difference is not in the event itself, but in the way it is processed mentally. A growth mindset begins with recognizing that most of what happens in life is neutral. It is only our interpretation that makes it feel good or bad. If someone criticizes you, the words themselves are just sound. It is your mind that decides whether it is an attack, a lesson, or something to be ignored. If you fail at something, the failure itself is simply an event. It is your mind that turns it into shame or into a chance to improve. A person with a fixed mindset believes their abilities are set. They think that intelligence, talent, and success are things you either have or don't. Because of this, they fear failure. They take mistakes personally. They hesitate to try new things because they worry about how they will be perceived. A person with a growth mindset understands that everything can be developed. They see every challenge as a test of endurance, every mistake as feedback, and every rejection as a redirection. Instead of avoiding discomfort, they embrace it because they know that struggle is where transformation happens. This is why Stoicism and growth mindset are inseparable. The Stoic does not attach their worth to outcomes. They do not fear looking foolish in the short term because they are thinking long term. They do not chase external validation because they know it is fleeting. They focus only on what they can control, and that is always their own effort, perspective, and response to life. Mental resilience is not about pretending things don't hurt. It is about learning to absorb the hit, analyze it, and move forward without losing momentum. Most people let emotions dictate their decisions. They feel rejected and quit. They feel frustrated and lash out. They feel overwhelmed and freeze. The Stoic, however, recognizes emotions but does not obey them blindly. They pause, they think, they act with intention instead of reaction. A mind ruled by emotions is like a leaf in the wind, tossed around by circumstances with no control. A mind trained in resilience is like a deep-rooted tree, flexible but unshakable. To build this kind of mindset, one must first understand the nature of struggle. Most people assume that when something is difficult, it means they are failing. But difficulty is simply a signal that you are operating at your limit, which means you are growing. Everything easy was once difficult. The person who lifts heavy weights was once unable to lift even half of that. The speaker who commands a room once struggled to find words. The successful entrepreneur once failed repeatedly. The difference between them and those who never improve is that they push through the discomfort instead of avoiding it. Growth requires friction. Mental resilience requires testing. No one becomes strong by staying where they are comfortable. The Stoic does not wish for an easy life. They do not seek a path without struggle. They prepare for challenges and welcome them as opportunities to sharpen themselves. They do not waste energy complaining about things outside their control. They focus entirely on adapting, improving, and mastering themselves. A person who has mastered their mind cannot be easily broken. They are not controlled by praise or criticism. They are not discouraged by failure. They are not afraid to take risks because they know that every experience, good or bad, will teach them something. This is not about being emotionless. This is about being in command of yourself. It is about replacing impulsive reactions with measured responses. It is about training yourself to find the lesson in every hardship. Every moment of struggle is a moment of choice. You can see it as proof that you are not good enough, or you can see it as proof that you are being tested for the next level of growth. The mind you have today is the result of years of conditioning, but just as it was shaped by the past, it can be reshaped for the future. A Stoic growth mindset is not built in a single moment, but through every choice you make to face difficulties instead of avoiding them, to control what you can instead of worrying about what you can't, and to train yourself to see failure not as defeat, but as part of the process. Every hardship is an invitation to grow. Those who accept it will always rise above those who do not. The strongest minds in history were not built through comfort. They were forged in the fire of failure, in the trials that broke others, but refined them. The difference between those who grow and those who remain stuck is not in how many times they fail, but in how they respond to failure itself. Some see it as a confirmation of their limits, a sign to retreat. Others recognize it as a necessary part of the path, a signal that growth is happening. Failure is often misunderstood. It is treated as something shameful, something to be avoided at all costs. This is why so many people hesitate to take action. They fear looking foolish. They fear making mistakes. They fear not getting it right the first time. But the truth is, failure is not the opposite of success. It is the foundation of it. Every major achievement, every breakthrough, every moment of mastery has been built on a history of failures that few people ever see. Society conditions people to seek perfection. From a young age, mistakes are punished, setbacks are met with disappointment, and success is celebrated only when it appears effortless. This creates an illusion that people who succeed were simply born gifted, that their paths were smooth, that they never struggled. But history tells a different story. The most accomplished minds in every field have endured failure at levels that would break most people. The reason they stand out is because they did not let those failures define them. A mind shaped by Stoicism sees failure through a different lens. It does not resist it or run from it. It studies it, learns from it, and grows because of it. There is no fear of looking foolish because the Stoic understands that temporary embarrassment is insignificant compared to long-term mastery. There's no attachment to immediate success because the focus is on the process of improvement, not the outcome of a single attempt. Failure is not a judgment on who you are. It is feedback. It is information. It is a reflection of where your skills currently stand, not a verdict on what you are capable of becoming. The only time failure becomes permanent is when it leads to quitting. As long as action continues, every failure becomes a stepping stone. The greatest mistake people make when facing failure is personalizing it. They do not see it as an event. They see it as an identity. Instead of thinking, "This strategy did not work," they think, "I am a failure." This subtle shift in perspective changes everything. It transforms what should be a temporary lesson into a permanent limitation. The Stoic mind resists this trap by separating results from self-worth. It understands that failure is nothing more than an experiment that provided new data. A scientist testing a theory does not view a failed experiment as a personal attack. They adjust, refine, and try again. This is the mindset that leads to growth. Those who fear failure tend to live cautiously. They take fewer risks, avoid challenges, and stay within familiar territory. This creates a comfortable existence but not a meaningful one. True fulfillment requires stepping into the unknown, and with that comes the inevitability of failure. The key is not to eliminate failure, but to train the mind to handle it effectively. When something does not go as planned, the immediate emotional reaction is often frustration, disappointment, or even shame. These emotions are natural, but they are not useful if left unchecked. The Stoic does not suppress emotions, but processes them with logic. Instead of reacting impulsively, they pause and analyze. They ask themselves what went wrong, what can be learned, and how to move forward more effectively. This approach prevents the downward spiral that failure can trigger in an untrained mind. Most people, when they fail, allow negative thoughts to take over. They replay the mistake in their head, dwell on what could have been, and let doubt creep in. This is wasted energy. A disciplined mind redirects that energy into reflection and adaptation. Resilience is built through exposure to failure. A person who has never failed in anything significant is not strong. They are untested. The first real challenge they face will shake them because they have never been forced to confront adversity. Those who have failed repeatedly and learned from it develop an unshakable core. They have already experienced setbacks and come out the other side. They know that failure is survivable, that progress continues, and that no single event determines their future. The discomfort of failure is temporary, but the lessons it provides are permanent. Every mistake highlights a weakness that needs to be strengthened. Every setback reveals a blind spot that can be corrected. Every rejection builds resilience against external validation. The person who embraces these lessons becomes stronger with each failure, while the person who avoids them remains fragile. Growth is not linear. The expectation that progress should always be smooth and upward is a myth. Real growth is full of dips, plateaus, and reversals. The reason so many people give up is because they believe that struggle means they are doing something wrong. In reality, struggle is proof that growth is happening. If everything is easy, it means you are staying within what you already know. There is a reason the most skilled individuals in any discipline train under pressure. Musicians deliberately practice difficult pieces to expand their abilities. Athletes push themselves beyond their limits to build endurance. Intellectuals seek out challenging ideas to refine their thinking. They do not avoid difficulty. They seek it because they understand that without resistance, there is no improvement. The way failure is framed mentally determines how much a person will grow. If it is seen as something to be avoided, progress will be limited. If it is seen as something to be embraced, every failure becomes a tool for refinement. The Stoic cultivates this perspective by detaching from short-term setbacks and keeping their focus on the larger picture. One of the core teachings of Stoicism is the control of perception. Events themselves do not dictate emotions. Interpretation does. A failure in business, relationships, or personal growth does not carry meaning on its own. The mind assigns meaning to it. A person with a fixed mindset will see failure as confirmation that they were never good enough to begin with. A person with a growth mindset will see failure as the process of becoming better. Success is not a single moment, but a continuous process. Those who are willing to fail more often and learn from it will always surpass those who try to avoid failure at all costs. The irony is that in trying to avoid failure, people fail in the worst way. They fail to grow. Reframing failure is a choice. The moment it is no longer viewed as a threat, but as a teacher, fear loses its power. There's no longer hesitation to take action because failure is no longer seen as a final outcome, but as a necessary step toward mastery. A person who refuses to be broken by failure is unstoppable. There is nothing the world can throw at them that they cannot recover from. They do not expect perfection. They do not seek approval. They do not waste time wishing things had gone differently. They use everything as fuel. The world does not reward those who never make mistakes. It rewards those who learn, adapt, and continue moving forward. The road to mastery is littered with failures that the weak could not withstand. But for those who are willing to endure, failure is nothing more than the price of progress. The Stoic does not fear this price. They pay it willingly, knowing that each failure is another brick in the foundation of an unshakable mind. Failure teaches resilience, but fear of failure creates hesitation. Most people are not held back by their limitations, but by the fear of testing those limits. They hesitate, overthink, and convince themselves that the risk is too great. The mind fills with questions. What if it doesn't work? What if others judge? What if it leads to loss? This cycle of doubt keeps people stuck, avoiding opportunities, choosing comfort over growth, and settling for less than they are capable of. Risk is unavoidable. The person who tries to avoid risk ends up taking the greatest risk of all, living a life of regret. Everything worth achieving carries uncertainty. There is no success without the possibility of failure, no progress without the chance of setbacks, and no meaningful change without stepping into the unknown. The people who accomplish the most are not necessarily more talented or intelligent. They are simply more willing to take action despite uncertainty. Fear of risk is rooted in attachment to outcomes. People want guarantees. They want to be sure that their efforts will succeed before they begin. This desire for certainty is the greatest enemy of action. The Stoic mind does not demand certainty because it understands that nothing external can ever be fully controlled. The only control lies in the actions taken, the effort given, and the ability to adapt to whatever comes next. The greatest breakthroughs in history happen because someone chose to act despite the unknown. Every invention, every business, every piece of art, every new idea required someone to take a risk with no guarantee of success. The difference between those who move forward and those who stay stuck is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act in spite of it. Fear of risk is often magnified by social conditioning. From an early age, people are taught to avoid mistakes, to play it safe, to follow established paths. Those who step outside the norm face judgment, criticism, and doubt from others. This creates a deep-rooted fear of standing out, of failing publicly, of making decisions that go against what is expected. Most people do not fear risk itself. They fear how others will perceive them if they fail. A mind that seeks approval will always struggle with risk. The more a person depends on external validation, the harder it becomes to take bold action. The Stoic removes this dependence by focusing only on what is within control. Others' opinions, outcomes, and reactions are all beyond control. What remains within control is the ability to act with courage, to face challenges without hesitation, and to measure success not by external rewards, but by internal growth. Risk and uncertainty are natural parts of life. They cannot be avoided, only embraced. The Stoic does not waste energy resisting what is inevitable. Instead, they train themselves to meet uncertainty with confidence. The fear of risk is not a reason to avoid action. It is a signal that action is necessary. Growth is found at the edge of comfort, and risk is the gateway to that growth. Most fears surrounding risk are exaggerated. The mind creates worst-case scenarios, building mountains out of small obstacles. People fear rejection, but survive it. They fear failure, but recover from it. They fear change, but adapt to it. The more a person exposes themselves to risk, the more they realize that the imagined consequences are far worse than reality. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the ability to move forward despite it. The Stoic does not wait for fear to disappear before acting. They acknowledge it, but they do not let it dictate their choices. Every risk taken, every challenge faced, strengthens the ability to act boldly in the future. What once seemed terrifying becomes manageable. Avoiding risk does not eliminate fear, it strengthens it. The more a person avoids challenges, the more power fear gains over their mind. The longer they hesitate, the more they reinforce the belief that they cannot handle uncertainty. The only way to weaken fear is through direct confrontation. Small risks build tolerance for larger ones. The more often a person steps outside their comfort zone, the more natural it becomes. The person who fears risk the most is the one who has not faced enough of it. They have protected themselves from discomfort, shielded themselves from failure, and as a result, they have never tested their full capabilities. The only way to build true confidence is through experience. Taking risks, even small ones, creates a feedback loop. The more action is taken, the more the mind learns that uncertainty is survivable. There is no reward without risk. The person who starts a business risks financial loss, but they also gain the possibility of freedom. The person who expresses their true thoughts risks rejection, but they also gain authenticity. The person who steps into new opportunities risks failure, but they also gain growth. The person who avoids risk avoids all of these possibilities as well. Most people wait for the right time. They convince themselves that they need more knowledge, more preparation, more certainty, but the right time never comes. Conditions are never perfect. There will always be uncertainty, always be challenges, always be reasons to hesitate. The Stoic acts regardless. They do not wait for the fear to disappear. They move forward with it. The attachment to outcomes is what makes risk seem terrifying. People want guarantees. They want to know that their efforts will be rewarded, that they will succeed without setbacks. But the Stoic understands that outcomes are outside of control. The focus is not on what happens, but on how they respond to what happens. Every failure, every unexpected turn, every obstacle is met with adaptability, not despair. The fear of risk is tied to the fear of loss. People hesitate to take action because they do not want to lose time, money, energy, or reputation. But loss is inevitable in life. Things will not always go as planned. The Stoic doesn't waste time fearing what cannot be prevented. Instead, they focus on what can be gained. Every risk carries a lesson, an experience, an opportunity to grow. Even when things do not go as expected, there is always something valuable to take away. Hesitation kills more dreams than failure ever will. The person who does not take action because of fear of risk guarantees their own stagnation. The world belongs to those who are willing to step into uncertainty, to act without knowing the full outcome, to take the leap while others are still deciding if it's worth it. Risk is not something to be eliminated, but something to be mastered. The more comfortable a person becomes with uncertainty, the more freedom they gain. They are no longer controlled by fear, no longer waiting for external validation, no longer avoiding challenges. They move through life with confidence, knowing that no matter what happens, they will adapt, learn, and grow. Nothing is gained from hesitation. Time passes whether action is taken or not. Those who act boldly experience more, learn more, and achieve more. They do not waste years waiting for certainty. They do not live with regrets of what could have been. They move forward, not because they are fearless, but because they have trained themselves to rise above fear. The Stoic understands that life itself is a risk. There are no guarantees, no promises of security, no way to predict every outcome. The only choice is to embrace this reality or be paralyzed by it. Those who embrace it find strength. They take risks, not recklessly, but with wisdom, knowing that the real failure is never taking the chance at all. Hesitation is a habit. The more a person postpones action, the easier it becomes to keep postponing. The more they let fear dictate their choices, the more power fear gains. The only way to break this cycle is through action. Small steps lead to bigger ones. The first risk taken makes the next one easier. Those who accomplish the most in life are not the ones who never failed. They are the ones who failed and kept moving, the ones who took risks when others hesitated, the ones who acted boldly when others waited for permission. There is no perfect time. There is only now. The decision to act or to wait, to take a risk or to avoid it, to embrace uncertainty or to fear it. The person who chooses action, even in the face of fear, builds a life of growth, strength, and resilience. The one who avoids risk remains exactly where they are, looking back at all the moments they let slip away. Fear of risk keeps most people stuck, but those who rise above it gain something that few ever experience: true mastery over their craft, their mind, and their destiny. The ability to act despite uncertainty is what separates those who accomplish greatness from those who merely wish for it. The difference between average and elite is not talent, luck, or intelligence. It is mindset. The world's highest performers do not wait for permission. They do not hesitate when the future is unclear, and they do not allow fear to dictate their actions. They move forward with discipline, knowing that success is not a single event, but a long-term process of continuous refinement. Excellence is not an accident. It is not the result of natural ability alone. It is built through deliberate choices, disciplined habits, and the ability to withstand failure without losing momentum. Most people never reach their full potential because they treat performance as a short-term pursuit. They seek immediate results, crave instant validation, and measure success by how quickly they see progress. Elite performers think differently. They approach mastery as a lifelong commitment, not a momentary goal. They are not distracted by temporary setbacks or discouraged by slow progress. They understand that real improvement compounds over time, and the rewards are only visible to those who are patient enough to endure the process. Training the mind for long-term excellence requires breaking free from the patterns that keep most people stuck in mediocrity. The majority live in cycles of motivation and burnout, pushing hard when they feel inspired but retreating when obstacles arise. This is why most efforts fail. Inspiration is fleeting. Emotional highs are unreliable. Elite performers do not depend on motivation. They operate from discipline. They do not rely on feelings to determine their actions. They have systems in place that keep them moving forward, regardless of circumstances. One of the greatest weaknesses of the average mind is its obsession with outcomes. People want guarantees. They want to know that their effort will be rewarded before they commit to anything. This attachment to results makes them fragile. When progress is slow, they lose faith. When success is not immediate, they abandon the process. Elite performers remove this attachment. They do not base their commitment on quick results. They base it on the knowledge that mastery is built through consistency over time. They embrace the work for its own sake, knowing that the rewards will come naturally to those who persist. There is a reason the best in the world do not panic in high-pressure situations. They do not let mistakes break them. They do not collapse under stress. This is not because they are immune to pressure, but because they have trained themselves to handle it. They have exposed themselves to discomfort so often that it no longer has power over them. They have failed so many times that failure no longer feels threatening. This is the key to long-term excellence, not avoiding difficulty, but becoming so familiar with it that it loses its ability to intimidate. The way a person trains their mind determines the level they can reach. The majority seek comfort. They do not push beyond their limits. They stop when things become difficult. Elite performers do the opposite. They deliberately seek resistance. They understand that struggle is where growth happens. They expose themselves to high levels of challenge, knowing that this is the only way to build resilience. They do not run from discomfort. They pursue it. Their tolerance for pressure increases, and what once seemed overwhelming becomes manageable. Those who master long-term excellence think differently about failure. Where others see failure as a reason to stop, they see it as feedback. Every mistake, every loss, every setback is treated as data. They analyze it, adjust their approach, and continue moving forward. They do not attach emotion to failure because they see it as part of the process. This is why they are relentless. They have trained themselves to extract value from every experience, no matter how difficult. They have rewired their thinking to see obstacles as opportunities rather than threats. The human mind is naturally resistant to long-term thinking. It craves immediate results, seeks shortcuts, and avoids anything that requires sustained effort. This is why most people struggle with patience. They become frustrated when progress is slow, lose interest when results take time, and give up before they reach their full potential. Elite performers have trained their minds to resist this impulse. They understand that real mastery is measured in years, not weeks. They do not chase quick wins. They build a foundation so strong that no setback can break them. Focus is one of the most underrated aspects of long-term excellence. The majority are distracted. They chase multiple goals at once, constantly shift their priorities, and never commit fully to a single path. This lack of focus prevents deep mastery. Elite performers know that true excellence comes from depth, not surface-level effort. They do not spread themselves thin. They choose a path and dedicate themselves to it fully. They understand that every distraction, every divided effort, dilutes their potential. They protect their mental energy, eliminate unnecessary commitments, and channel their attention toward what truly matters. Mental toughness is a byproduct of training under difficult conditions. Those who have never faced hardship remain weak. Their minds are untested, their resilience unproven. This is why elite performers deliberately put themselves in situations that force them to grow. They train harder than the competition. They push themselves beyond what is comfortable. They welcome failure as a tool for refinement. They do not seek an easy path because they know that ease does not build strength. They embrace suffering, knowing that it forges the kind of mind that cannot be broken. Consistency is the defining trait of those who reach the highest levels. Most people work hard only when they feel motivated. They start with enthusiasm but lose interest when results are not immediate. They make excuses when circumstances are not ideal. Elite performers do not operate this way. They show up every day, regardless of how they feel. They put in the work whether or not they are inspired. They do not allow external conditions to dictate their actions. They have built discipline so strong that effort becomes automatic. The way a person approaches small tasks is a reflection of how they will handle major challenges. Those who neglect the small things, who cut corners, who make excuses, who avoid discomfort in daily habits, will struggle when faced with real adversity. The elite understand this. They treat everything with the same level of discipline, no matter how minor it may seem. They hold themselves to high standards in all areas, knowing that excellence is a habit, not an occasional act. The ability to delay gratification is a fundamental trait of long-term excellence. The majority seek immediate rewards. They give up long-term success for short-term comfort. They abandon discipline for temporary pleasure. Elite performers think differently. They are willing to sacrifice short-term gratification for greater rewards in the future. They understand that self-control is the foundation of all achievement. They train themselves to resist impulses, to prioritize long-term vision over fleeting desires, and to stay committed even when distractions arise. Adaptability separates those who stagnate from those who continue to rise. No plan unfolds perfectly. No strategy works forever. The world changes, circumstances shift, and unexpected obstacles arise. Those who are rigid, who refuse to adjust, who cling to old methods out of fear, will fall behind. The best performers do not resist change, they master it. They are flexible in their approach, but unshakable in their commitment. They recognize when adjustments are needed, learn from every situation, and continuously refine their methods. This is why they remain ahead. Training the mind for long-term excellence requires unlearning many of the patterns that hold people back. Fear of judgment, attachment to quick results, dependence on motivation, avoidance of discomfort. These are the habits that keep most people stuck. Those who rise to the top have removed these limitations. They do not concern themselves with what others think. They do not expect results overnight. They do not wait to feel ready. They commit fully, act boldly, and persist without hesitation. Those who study the lives of elite performers will find a common thread. It is not natural ability that sets them apart. It is not luck or privilege. It is the way they think, the way they train, and the way they approach every challenge. They have cultivated a level of discipline, patience, and mental strength that allows them to endure what others cannot. They have built habits that sustain them through difficulty. They have trained their minds to withstand setbacks without breaking, to pursue goals without distraction, and to act with unwavering confidence. Reaching the highest level in any field requires more than talent. It requires more than hard work. It requires an internal transformation, a shift in thinking so profound that failure no longer feels threatening. Uncertainty no longer creates fear, and obstacles no longer feel like barriers. Those who commit to this level of mastery do not just succeed, they redefine what is possible. The world belongs to those who are willing to endure, persist, and train their minds for long-term excellence. Those who make this commitment do not just achieve more, they become unstoppable. The highest performers in any field are not driven by the need for approval. They do not seek validation from others, nor do they allow external opinions to dictate their actions. They operate from an internal compass, making decisions based on principles rather than popularity. This is what allows them to take risks, to innovate, and to rise above the limitations that hold most people back. They do not waste energy trying to please everyone, because they understand that external validation is a fragile source of confidence. The moment approval is withdrawn, those who depend on it feel lost. The ones who master detachment, however, remain grounded no matter what the world thinks of them. Chasing approval is one of the biggest barriers to growth. The need to be liked, to be accepted, to receive constant affirmation from others weakens a person's ability to act decisively. It creates hesitation, self-doubt, and an over-reliance on opinions that are beyond control. Those who seek external validation become trapped in a cycle of pleasing others at the cost of their own growth. They avoid decisions that may bring criticism. They filter their actions through the expectations of others, and they remain in situations that no longer serve them because they fear disapproval. The Stoic mind recognizes this trap and actively rejects it. It does not measure success by applause or recognition. It does not allow opinions to determine self-worth. It remains focused on what is right, not on what is popular. This is the foundation of true confidence, the ability to stand firm in one's beliefs and actions without needing reassurance from anyone else. Those who cultivate this mindset become immune to the ups and downs of public opinion. They move forward without hesitation, unaffected by praise or criticism, because they have freed themselves from the need for external validation. Seeking approval is exhausting. It forces people to constantly adjust their behavior, to monitor reactions, to shape themselves into what they believe others want them to be. This is a losing game, because no one can control how others perceive them. What pleases one person may offend another. What earns respect today may be forgotten tomorrow. The pursuit of validation is endless, and those who chase it never find peace. They become prisoners of perception, measuring their worth by how they are seen rather than by who they truly are. The strongest minds are those that have detached from this need. They do not shrink themselves to fit into expectations. They do not waste time proving their worth to others. They move with certainty, knowing that real success is not about being liked. It is about being true to one's values. This is why they are respected, even by those who may not agree with them. There is something undeniable about a person who stands firm in their beliefs, who does not seek approval but commands respect through their actions. Most people are conditioned from an early age to seek validation. Praise is rewarded, mistakes are criticized, and social belonging is prioritized over individual growth. This creates a deep-rooted fear of disapproval. People become afraid to speak their mind, afraid to take bold actions, afraid to step outside of what is considered acceptable. They silence themselves to avoid conflict. They follow trends rather than thinking independently. They suppress their true nature to fit in. Over time, they lose sight of who they really are because they have spent their entire lives molding themselves into what others expect. Freedom begins the moment this conditioning is broken. The moment a person realizes that external validation is unnecessary, they unlock a level of independence that few ever reach. They no longer make decisions based on approval. They no longer fear rejection. They no longer seek permission to be themselves. They live authentically, knowing that the right people will respect them for who they are, and those who don't are irrelevant. The greatest breakthroughs in history were made by those who did not seek validation. They were made by thinkers who challenged convention, by leaders who went against popular opinion, by innovators who ignored the critics. If these people had sought approval, they would have never taken the risks necessary to change the world. They would have played it safe, avoiding controversy, trying to be liked rather than trying to be great. The cost of approval is often the sacrifice of potential. The fear of judgment is one of the biggest reasons people hold back in life. They worry about what others will think if they fail, if they look foolish, if they make the wrong choice. This fear paralyzes them. They spend more time analyzing how they will be perceived than actually taking action. They hesitate, they overthink, and in the end, they remain exactly where they started. The truth is, most people are too busy with their own lives to spend much time thinking about others. The judgments that seem so overwhelming in the moment are often forgotten within days, but the regrets of inaction last forever. Stoicism teaches that external validation is nothing more than noise. It is a distraction, a shifting force that cannot be relied upon. One day people may praise you. The next, they may criticize you. If self-worth is tied to this, confidence will always be fragile. The Stoics separate self-worth from external opinion. They do not seek to be liked. They seek to be honorable. They do not aim for popularity. They aim for self-respect. They do not let the shifting approval of the world determine their path. Indifference to approval is not about arrogance. It is not about refusing to listen to feedback or rejecting all social norms. It is about understanding the difference between valuable input and meaningless noise. Constructive criticism is useful. Mindless opinions are not. The Stoic is willing to learn, willing to grow, but never at the cost of their integrity. They take advice when it aligns with their principles, but they do not change themselves to gain favor. Many people fear that if they stop seeking validation, they will be isolated. But the opposite is true. Those who live authentically attract people who respect them for who they are. When approval is no longer a concern, relationships become stronger. There is no need to impress, no need to filter thoughts, no need to pretend. This creates genuine connections rather than shallow ones built on performance. Detaching from validation requires self-awareness. It requires questioning where the need for approval comes from, recognizing how it influences decisions, and actively working to break free from it. It is a process of unlearning habits that have been reinforced over years. The more a person practices making decisions without seeking approval, the easier it becomes. The first time may feel uncomfortable, but over time it becomes second nature. A person who does not seek validation moves through life with a sense of freedom that others cannot understand. They are not controlled by opinions. They are not thrown off course by criticism. They do not chase trends or bend themselves to fit expectations. They live by their own standards, guided by their own values. This is why they stand out. This is why they lead. This is why they remain unshaken while others struggle with self-doubt. The cost of chasing approval is high. It leads to self-betrayal, to a life shaped by external forces rather than internal conviction. It causes people to stay in unfulfilling careers, to maintain relationships that no longer serve them, to suppress their own dreams in favor of pleasing others. It creates a life of quiet dissatisfaction, where every decision is made not for oneself, but for the approval of those who may not even care. Breaking free from this need is one of the most powerful transformations a person can undergo. It shifts the entire way they approach life. No longer seeking validation means no longer fearing rejection. It means taking action without hesitation. It means speaking the truth without filtering it for acceptance. It means choosing a path based on what is right, not on what is easy. The world does not need more people who seek approval. It needs more people who stand firm in their convictions, who do not waver in the face of opinion, who lead without needing permission. These are the people who create real change. These are the people who rise above. These are the people who, in the end, earn the deepest respect, not because they sought it, but because they never needed it in the first place. Seeking approval creates invisible barriers that limit growth. When decisions are based on external validation, progress is determined by others rather than by internal drive. This is one of the greatest forms of self-imposed limitation. The mind becomes conditioned to avoid risks, to resist change, and to remain in familiar territory where acceptance is guaranteed. This restriction does not come from reality itself, but from deeply ingrained beliefs about what is possible. The real challenge is not external rejection, but the internal mindset that dictates whether obstacles become roadblocks or stepping stones. Self-imposed limits shape every aspect of life. They determine how much effort is put into improvement, how setbacks are interpreted, and how challenges are approached. Some people treat difficulties as evidence that they're not capable, while others see them as opportunities to refine their skills. This fundamental difference in perspective is what separates those who grow from those who remain stagnant. A fixed mindset reinforces limitations, convincing people that their abilities are predetermined. A growth mindset dismantles those limitations by recognizing that effort, strategy, and persistence are what create progress. Stoicism teaches that external events are neutral, and it is the mind that assigns meaning to them. The same applies to personal abilities. If a person believes they cannot improve, they will not take action to change. If they believe they're capable of learning and evolving, they will continue to push forward even in the face of difficulty. This belief is not just motivational thinking, it is the foundation of real transformation. The greatest breakthroughs come from those who refuse to accept fixed limitations, those who see every struggle as a step toward mastery. People with a fixed mindset operate under the assumption that intelligence, talent, and skill are static. They believe that success is reserved for those who were born with natural ability. This leads to a fear of failure because every setback feels like proof of inadequacy. Instead of focusing on growth, they focus on avoiding situations that might expose their weaknesses. They play it safe, only engaging in activities where they are already skilled. This protects their ego in the short term, but severely limits their potential in the long term. A growth mindset removes this fear by shifting the focus from outcomes to learning. It is not about being naturally gifted, but about becoming better through consistent effort. Those who adopt this mindset do not see failure as a personal flaw. They see it as a natural part of progress. They understand that every expert was once a beginner, every skill requires refinement, and every great achievement is built on a foundation of repeated effort. They embrace difficulty because they know it is the only way to expand their capabilities. Many people unknowingly reinforce a fixed mindset through the way they speak to themselves. Thoughts like, "I'm not good at this," "I could never do that," or "I'm just not that kind of person," create self-fulfilling limitations. The mind follows the narrative it is given. If a person believes they are incapable, they will not take the necessary steps to improve. If they tell themselves that they are capable of learning, they will approach challenges with a sense of determination rather than defeat. Stoicism provides a framework for breaking these mental chains. It emphasizes control over internal perception rather than external circumstances. A person cannot always control the difficulty of a task, but they can control how they approach it. They cannot always dictate outcomes, but they can control their effort and persistence. This shift in focus is what allows them to step beyond self-imposed limits. The obstacle itself does not matter. What matters is the way it is interpreted and responded to. The reason some people remain stuck while others excel is not intelligence or opportunity alone. It is mindset. Those with a fixed mindset hesitate to take on new challenges because they fear looking incompetent. Those with a growth mindset actively seek challenges because they know that discomfort leads to progress. The fixed mindset causes people to compare themselves to others, leading to feelings of inadequacy. The growth mindset focuses only on personal improvement, measuring progress against one's past self rather than against others. Effort is often misunderstood by those with a fixed mindset. They see it as something that should not be necessary if they are truly talented. They believe that struggling means they are not good enough, so they avoid anything that requires sustained effort. In contrast, those with a growth mindset view effort as the very thing that leads to mastery. They do not expect immediate success. They are willing to endure frustration and setbacks because they know that every repetition, every failure, and every adjustment brings them closer to their goal. Failure is one of the most powerful teachers, but only for those who are willing to learn from it. A fixed mindset interprets failure as a dead end. A growth mindset sees it as valuable data. When something doesn't go as planned, those with a fixed mindset internalize it as personal inadequacy. Those with a growth mindset detach from the emotion of the moment and analyze what went wrong. They refine their approach, make adjustments, and try again with more knowledge than before. This ability to extract lessons from failure is what ultimately leads to success. Criticism is another area where the difference between mindsets becomes clear. A fixed mindset takes criticism personally, seeing it as an attack on their identity. They react defensively or ignore it entirely. A growth mindset, however, sees criticism as a tool for improvement. They recognize that constructive feedback is not meant to diminish them, but to help them refine their skills. They welcome insights from those who have more experience, knowing that external perspectives can reveal blind spots they may not see on their own. The need for perfection often traps people in a fixed mindset. They believe that if they cannot do something perfectly, they should not do it at all. This prevents them from starting, from experimenting, from taking risks. Perfectionism creates paralysis, causing hesitation that leads to wasted time and missed opportunities. A growth mindset does not seek perfection, it seeks progress. It understands that the first attempt will never be flawless, but it is necessary to get to the next stage of improvement. It prioritizes action over waiting for the perfect moment. Those with a fixed mindset often avoid feedback because they fear what it might reveal. They would rather remain in ignorance than confront their weaknesses. This keeps them stuck at the same level indefinitely. Those with a growth mindset actively seek feedback because they want to improve. They are not afraid to hear where they need to grow, because they do not tie their self-worth to being perfect. They know that blind spots can only be corrected if they are acknowledged. The environment plays a significant role in shaping mindset. Surrounding oneself with people who reinforce a fixed perspective will naturally limit growth. If those around them believe that success is purely based on talent and luck, it becomes harder to break free from that belief. Those who cultivate a growth mindset often surround themselves with people who challenge them, who push them, who provide honest feedback rather than empty reassurance. They seek out mentors, books, and experiences that expand their thinking rather than reinforcing their current limits. Resilience is a natural byproduct of a growth mindset. Those who understand that struggle is part of progress do not break under pressure. They do not see difficulties as unfair burdens, but as necessary steps in their development. They do not become discouraged when things take longer than expected. They persist, knowing that every obstacle they overcome makes them stronger. The fixed mindset, on the other hand, collapses under difficulty because it was never trained to endure setbacks. A growth mindset is not about blind optimism or ignoring difficulties. It is about approaching challenges with a sense of purpose. It does not pretend that failure is enjoyable, but it refuses to let failure define the person experiencing it. It does not deny struggle, but it sees struggle as something that serves a purpose. It recognizes that setbacks are not permanent unless they are accepted as such. The transition from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset is a process of rewiring the way challenges are viewed. It requires shifting from a perspective of limitation to one of possibility. It demands the ability to see oneself not as a static being, but as a work in progress. The Stoic approach to growth removes the fear of failure, the need for validation, and the attachment to immediate success. It replaces hesitation with action, fear with resilience, and self-doubt with a firm belief that growth is always possible. The difference between those who reach their potential and those who do not is never talent alone. It is the ability to see beyond limitations, to detach from the fear of failure, and to understand that mastery is earned through persistence. Those who adopt this perspective become unstoppable, not because they are without struggles, but because they refuse to let those struggles become permanent barriers. Breaking free from self-imposed limits is the first step, but sustaining growth requires learning how to handle setbacks without allowing them to define personal identity. No matter how strong the mindset, difficulties will arise, mistakes will happen, and failures will occur. The difference between those who continue to grow and those who remain stuck is not in avoiding setbacks, but in how they are processed and used as fuel for improvement. The ability to extract lessons from adversity without internalizing defeat is what determines long-term success. Setbacks often feel personal because they challenge confidence and expose vulnerabilities. The natural response is to take them as confirmation of inadequacy, to allow them to reinforce doubts and insecurities. This is what causes hesitation, second-guessing, and eventually retreating into avoidance. But setbacks are not reflections of ability or worth. They are neutral events that only gain meaning through interpretation. The Stoic approach is to separate outcomes from identity, recognizing that a failed attempt does not equate to being a failure. The most damaging reaction to setbacks is self-judgment. When something goes wrong, many people turn against themselves, creating an internal narrative that amplifies the pain. Instead of focusing on what can be learned, they focus on what went wrong. Instead of seeing the next step, they replay the past in their mind, turning temporary difficulties into permanent limitations. The way setbacks are framed mentally dictates whether they become barriers or stepping stones. The difference between stagnation and resilience is not in avoiding failure, but in refusing to let it dictate future actions. One of the biggest mistakes people make is equating effort with entitlement. They assume that if they work hard, success should follow without resistance. When things do not go as planned, they feel betrayed by the process, questioning whether their efforts were worth it. But difficulty is not a sign that something is impossible. It is proof that the process of growth is working. Resistance does not mean failure. It is an indication that limits are being tested, skills are being refined, and endurance is being built. Those who push through setbacks without seeking immediate results develop a kind of strength that is unshakable. There is no growth without friction. The very nature of improvement requires pushing beyond previous limits, and that means encountering failure. People often assume that struggling means they are doing something wrong, but the struggle itself is necessary. Every new skill, every level of mastery, and every breakthrough is built on the foundation of past failures. Those who accept this reality move forward with less hesitation, while those who expect perfection from the start become discouraged at the first sign of difficulty. The ability to separate temporary setbacks from long-term progress is one of the most important skills a person can develop. It prevents frustration from turning into resignation. It allows mistakes to be used as guidance rather than as reasons to quit. Those who let setbacks define them remain in cycles of hesitation, avoiding challenges for fear of experiencing failure again. Those who see setbacks as part of the process continue moving forward, learning from each misstep and refining their approach with every new attempt. Reframing setbacks requires shifting focus from loss to gain. Most people, when facing failure, focus on what was lost: time, effort, reputation, confidence. But failure is never a complete loss if something is gained from it. The greatest lessons are often learned through mistakes, not through smooth success. Each failure reveals something about weaknesses, blind spots, or approaches that need adjustment. Those who focus on what can be gained from failure emerge stronger. Those who focus only on what was lost become discouraged and stop trying. Many people allow setbacks to dictate their identity because they view them in isolation. They judge themselves based on a single moment rather than the larger picture of growth. But no single failure defines a person. The final outcome is determined by repeated action, not by any single event. A temporary defeat does not override past progress, nor does it prevent future success. When setbacks are seen as isolated events rather than defining moments, they lose their ability to create lasting damage. Fear of failure often stems from the belief that others are watching, judging, and waiting for mistakes. This mindset creates unnecessary pressure, making every challenge feel heavier than it really is. But the truth is, most people are too focused on their own struggles to pay attention to the setbacks of others. The fear of being seen failing is far worse than the reality. The moment a person stops performing for an audience and starts focusing purely on their own growth, setbacks lose much of their emotional weight. There is a reason why those who succeed at the highest level have all faced failure at extreme levels. The strongest leaders, the most skilled athletes, the most innovative minds have all experienced setbacks far greater than the average person. What sets them apart is not the absence of failure, but the ability to keep moving through it. They do not avoid risk. They do not let failures dictate their belief in themselves. They treat every challenge as another piece of the process rather than as a verdict on their ability. The way setbacks are internalized determines whether they create strength or weakness. If failure is seen as personal, it becomes heavy, discouraging, and paralyzing. If failure is seen as neutral, as a moment of feedback rather than as a final judgment, it becomes an opportunity for refinement. This shift in thinking allows resilience to develop naturally. Those who practice this approach learn to move forward with confidence, knowing that failure is never permanent unless they allow it to be. People often look at setbacks emotionally rather than strategically. Instead of asking what they can do differently, they dwell on how they feel about what happened. This leads to frustration, overthinking, and unnecessary suffering. The most effective response to failure is analysis, not self-judgment. Looking at mistakes objectively removes the emotional weight and replaces it with clarity. Instead of dwelling on what went wrong, the focus shifts to how things can be improved. This approach allows failure to serve its purpose rather than becoming an anchor that slows progress. Those who are controlled by setbacks often fall into the trap of comparing themselves to others. They look at those who seem to succeed effortlessly and wonder why they struggle. But every success story is built on failures that are not always visible. No one reaches mastery without difficulty. The difference is that those who grow do not let their failures be the reason they stop. They understand that the struggle is part of the journey, and they do not let temporary losses overshadow long-term potential. Confidence is built not by avoiding failure, but by facing it repeatedly until it no longer feels threatening. Every time a person moves forward after a setback, they strengthen their ability to handle difficulty. Over time, this process removes the fear of failure entirely. It is no longer something to avoid, but something to use as a tool for refinement. The more exposure a person has to setbacks, the less power they hold. They become just another step in the process rather than an obstacle that creates doubt. Many people assume that avoiding risk will protect them from setbacks, but in reality, it only ensures stagnation. The person who never tries anything difficult may not fail as often, but they also never grow. They remain confined to the limits of what they already know, never expanding beyond what feels safe. In contrast, those who willingly step into challenges, even knowing they might fail, continuously grow in skill, resilience, and confidence. They are not afraid to take risks because they have proven to themselves that failure does not break them. The mindset required to move forward despite setbacks is not something a person is born with. It is built through repetition, through small acts of perseverance, through learning to see failure as a necessary step rather than as a final outcome. Those who cultivate this mindset develop an internal strength that allows them to navigate any difficulty without losing momentum. They become adaptable, able to adjust to changing circumstances without being thrown off course. They do not let emotions dictate their actions. They move with purpose, knowing that each challenge they face is shaping them into something stronger. Setbacks will happen. That is unavoidable. What is entirely within control is how they are handled. The choice is always between using failure as an excuse to stop or as a reason to keep improving. Those who choose the latter will always surpass those who allow setbacks to define them. The greatest advantage anyone can develop is the ability to move forward no matter what happens, to take lessons from every failure without attaching personal meaning to them, and to recognize that progress is never linear but always possible. Mastering setbacks is only part of the equation. True growth requires the ability to question assumptions, challenge personal beliefs, and acknowledge that there will always be gaps in understanding. The greatest minds throughout history have not been those who claimed to know everything, but those who remained open to learning, adjusting, and refining their perspectives. The moment a person believes they have all the answers, progress halts. The world continues to evolve, knowledge expands, and those who refuse to adapt are left behind. Intellectual humility is not about downplaying intelligence or lacking confidence. It is the ability to recognize that no matter how much is known, there is always more to learn. It removes the need to defend outdated ideas, the fear of being wrong, and the tendency to resist perspectives that challenge existing beliefs. This is what separates those who continue to grow from those who remain stagnant. The unwillingness to question one's own understanding is the greatest barrier to wisdom. Most people attach their identity to their knowledge. They build their self-worth around being seen as competent, well-informed, and correct. This attachment creates resistance to new information, especially if it contradicts something previously believed. Instead of viewing new knowledge as an opportunity to grow, they see it as a threat to their ego. This is why so many people refuse to change their minds, even in the face of overwhelming evidence. It is not the truth they are defending. It is their sense of self. The strongest minds welcome intellectual discomfort. They do not seek validation through agreement. They do not cling to opinions simply because they have held them for a long time. They embrace the idea that they might be wrong, not as a weakness, but as a path to greater understanding. They ask questions, not to prove a point, but to refine their thinking. This is what makes them powerful. They are not afraid of uncertainty. They are not concerned with appearing knowledgeable. Their only concern is discovering what is true. Many people resist intellectual humility because they confuse certainty with strength. They believe that changing an opinion is a sign of weakness, that admitting a lack of knowledge undermines authority. But the reality is the opposite. The greatest thinkers are not those who claim absolute certainty, but those who remain open to being challenged. The mind that refuses to evolve is fragile. The mind that is flexible remains unbreakable. Rigidity leads to ignorance. Adaptability leads to wisdom. Ego is the greatest enemy of learning. The need to be right prevents the ability to grow. Those who cannot admit when they are wrong become trapped in outdated beliefs. They surround themselves with people who reinforce their views rather than those who challenge them. They dismiss alternative perspectives, not because they have considered them carefully, but because they are unwilling to confront the possibility of being mistaken. This is intellectual stagnation, and it is one of the most dangerous forms of limitation. The ability to acknowledge ignorance is one of the greatest strengths a person can develop. It allows for genuine learning rather than the illusion of knowledge. Those who believe they already understand everything stop asking questions. Those who recognize their own gaps in knowledge remain curious, always seeking deeper insight. This is why the wisest individuals often speak with the least certainty. They understand that knowledge is always incomplete, and they remain open to new possibilities. Defensiveness is a sign of insecurity. The person who immediately reacts with resistance when confronted with a new idea is not protecting truth. They are protecting pride. Those who are secure in their thinking do not feel threatened by different perspectives. They explore them, test them, and adjust their views if necessary. They do not need to win debates or prove others wrong. They are not attached to being seen as right. Their only attachment is to the pursuit of deeper understanding. One of the greatest tests of intellectual humility is the ability to listen without the intention to respond. Most people do not engage in conversation to learn. They engage to defend. They hear counter-arguments only long enough to formulate a rebuttal. Their focus is not on gaining insight, but on reinforcing their existing position. This creates a cycle of mental stagnation. They are exposed to new perspectives, but never allow those perspectives to alter their thinking. Those who practice intellectual humility, however, listen with the intent to understand. They set aside personal biases and evaluate information objectively. The fear of appearing ignorant is what keeps many people from asking the questions that would actually lead to knowledge. They remain silent rather than risk looking uninformed. But true intelligence is not about already having the answers. It is about the willingness to seek them. The most knowledgeable people in any field did not become experts by pretending to know everything. They asked questions, made mistakes, and admitted when they did not understand. They did not see gaps in knowledge as failures, but as opportunities to expand their understanding. Intellectual humility does not mean lacking conviction. It does not mean being indecisive or unwilling to stand for principles. It simply means being open to the possibility that there is more to learn. It means being willing to update beliefs when new evidence presents itself. It means holding strong opinions, but holding them loosely, ready to change if a better argument is presented. Those who practice this form of thinking do not shift their beliefs aimlessly. They change only when reason and logic demand it. This is what makes their convictions powerful. They are not based on blind adherence, but on careful examination. Arrogance in knowledge leads to stagnation. The belief that one has already reached a peak in understanding prevents further growth. Those who assume they have nothing left to learn remain trapped in their existing limitations. Their world becomes smaller, their ideas narrower, their thinking rigid. They dismiss challenges rather than engaging with them. They reject differing opinions, not because they are weak, but because they are unwilling to confront the possibility that they might be incomplete. A person who remains intellectually humble is never stagnant. They move through life with an openness that allows them to continuously refine their thinking. They are not held back by outdated beliefs. They do not fear contradiction. They do not see admitting a mistake as a loss. They understand that every new insight adds to their foundation of knowledge rather than taking away from it. This allows them to grow at a pace that those who cling to certainty can never match. Growth in any area, whether in skill, wisdom, or personal development, depends on the ability to recognize where improvement is needed. Those who assume they already know everything shut themselves off from the very opportunities that would allow them to evolve. The strongest individuals are those who seek out challenges to their own thinking. They welcome debate, engage with opposing views, and test their own beliefs against the best arguments available. They do not fear being wrong because they understand that discovering an error is simply another step toward deeper understanding. Pride is the enemy of wisdom. It blinds people to their own ignorance, making them resistant to correction. Those who let pride dictate their thinking remain trapped in old ways, unable to progress. They reject knowledge that does not align with their existing views, missing opportunities for growth. The ability to set aside pride and engage with new ideas, even when they challenge deeply held beliefs, is what allows true wisdom to develop. The most effective leaders, thinkers, and innovators share a common trait. They never stop learning. They do not allow expertise in one area to create the illusion that they are beyond learning in others. They recognize that no single person can grasp the full complexity of the world. They remain students no matter how much they have achieved. This keeps them adaptable, open to change, and always moving forward. Intellectual humility is not passive. It is not about surrendering to every argument or accepting all viewpoints as equally valid. It is about actively engaging with ideas, questioning assumptions, and refining understanding through careful thought. It is about remaining flexible enough to change, but disciplined enough to ensure that change is guided by reason rather than impulse. It is about pursuing truth with relentless curiosity rather than settling for convenient certainty. There is no limit to how much a person can grow when they release the need to be right. The more open the mind, the more space there is for wisdom to expand. The moment a person stops seeking new understanding is the moment they begin to decline. The willingness to admit that there is always more to learn is not a weakness. It is the greatest strength a mind can possess. Those who embrace this truth will always remain ahead, not because they have all the answers, but because they never stop searching for them. Recognizing that knowledge is never complete opens the door to real growth. But learning is not just about gathering information. It is about the ability to persist through difficulty, to adapt when faced with challenges, and to continue improving even when progress is slow. Many believe that success is a matter of talent, that those who rise to the top are simply gifted in ways others are not. But this belief is misleading. The real determining factor is not talent, but resilience. Intelligence and ability mean little if they are not paired with the discipline to push through setbacks and the endurance to keep learning long after motivation fades. The world is filled with people who were once considered talented but never fulfilled their potential. They started strong but lacked the resilience to continue when things became difficult. In contrast, history is full of individuals who were overlooked, underestimated, and even doubted by those around them, yet through sheer persistence they surpassed expectations. They were not the most gifted from the start, but they had something more valuable than talent. They had the ability to endure failure, to keep learning, and to persist long after others had given up. Resilience is what separates those who reach mastery from those who give up at the first sign of difficulty. The belief that skill is natural and that success should come easily is one of the most damaging illusions people hold. It creates a mindset that seeks quick rewards and avoids struggle. This is why so many abandon their pursuits when results are not immediate. They assume difficulty is a sign that they lack ability, rather than recognizing that struggle is an essential part of the learning process. The Stoic approach rejects the idea that talent determines success, and instead focuses on the ability to withstand hardship, learn from failure, and continue refining oneself regardless of obstacles. Lifelong learning is not about accumulating knowledge, but about developing the discipline to keep improving even when progress is slow. The mind must be trained to embrace difficulty rather than avoid it, to treat challenges as opportunities rather than as threats. This requires endurance. Those who expect learning to be easy will always stop when they reach the point of struggle. Those who understand that difficulty is necessary will persist through frustration, knowing that every challenge overcome strengthens their ability to continue. Most people approach learning with the assumption that ability is fixed. They believe that intelligence, creativity, and skill are natural traits that cannot be significantly improved. This belief leads to avoidance of challenges, fear of failure, and a tendency to quit when faced with difficulty. The Stoic approach removes this illusion. It recognizes that the mind, like the body, grows stronger through resistance. Just as muscles require stress to develop, intelligence and skill require struggle to improve. Without challenge, there is no growth. The fear of looking incompetent prevents many from persisting in the learning process. People do not like to struggle in public. They do not like to be seen failing. This causes them to stay within their comfort zones, only engaging in activities where they feel confident. But mastery requires the willingness to be a beginner, to endure moments of failure without losing determination. The most skilled individuals in any field were once unskilled. They did not start at the top. They started at the bottom and climbed through years of relentless effort. The difference between those who learn effectively and those who do not is not intelligence, but approach. Those who learn effectively embrace discomfort. They do not measure success by how easy something feels, but by how much they improve. They deliberately put themselves in situations where they are challenged because they understand that this is how real progress happens. Those who struggle with learning tend to avoid this discomfort. They seek validation instead of growth. They want to feel capable rather than becoming more capable. This mindset prevents improvement because it prioritizes short-term ease over long-term mastery. Resilience allows for deep learning because it removes the fear of temporary failure. People who lack resilience stop when they encounter difficulty, assuming that struggle means they are not meant to succeed. Those with resilience see difficulty as an indicator that they are in the right place. They know that if something is easy, it is not pushing them to grow. They do not see failure as an end point, but as a necessary part of the process. They do not attach self-worth to immediate success, but instead focus on consistent effort over time. Every master was once an amateur. The strongest minds were once filled with doubt. Those who now seem effortlessly skilled were once struggling to take their first steps. The only reason they reached the level they did is because they did not stop when things became difficult. They did not allow early failures to discourage them. They did not assume that talent was a requirement for mastery. They persisted, refined their approach, and learned through experience. This is the path that separates those who achieve great things from those who give up too soon. The expectation of fast results is one of the biggest obstacles to lifelong learning. Many assume that if they do not see improvement quickly, they are failing. This mindset causes frustration, leading people to quit just before they start seeing real progress. The Stoic approach removes this expectation entirely. It does not measure success by speed, but by consistency. A person who continues to learn, regardless of how long it takes, will always surpass the one who quits because results did not come fast enough. The ability to endure slow progress is a rare skill. In a world that rewards instant gratification, most people lack patience. They expect to see results without putting in the necessary effort. They want success without struggle. They want knowledge without difficulty. This is why so few develop real expertise. The ones who do are those who accept that mastery is a long process, that improvement is often invisible at first, and that perseverance is the most valuable trait they can cultivate. The strongest learners understand that failure is not a setback, but an essential component of success. They do not resist it, they do not fear it, and they do not let it break them. They embrace it as feedback, as a tool for refinement, as a necessary step toward progress. This mindset allows them to move forward while others remain stuck, trapped by their own frustration. Those who learn effectively do not ask whether they will encounter failure. They ask how they will respond when they do. Resilience is built through repeated exposure to difficulty. The more a person pushes through struggle, the less power struggle has over them. The first time something is difficult, it feels overwhelming. The second time, it feels manageable. The third time, it becomes routine. This is how mental toughness is developed. It is not a single decision, but a process of proving to oneself again and again that difficulty does not mean defeat. Many believe that learning is about intelligence, but intelligence without resilience is fragile. A person may be naturally gifted in a subject, but if they lack the endurance to keep going when things become challenging, the talent will amount to nothing. In contrast, a person of average intelligence but unshakable resilience will always continue learning, improving, and eventually surpassing those who relied solely on their natural ability. The greatest thinkers, the most skilled professionals, the strongest leaders all share one trait. They do not stop learning. They do not assume they have reached the peak of their ability. They do not let failure convince them to quit. They understand that lifelong learning is not a hobby or a temporary pursuit, but a way of life. They are not discouraged by slow progress. They do not expect immediate results. They persist, knowing that the process itself is what leads to mastery. A person who adopts this mindset gains an advantage over those who rely on talent alone. They do not view struggle as a reason to quit, but as a necessary stage of growth. They do not fear failure because they understand that every failure is a step toward improvement. They do not waste time seeking shortcuts because they know that true mastery is earned through persistence, not luck. Resilience is not just about enduring hardship. It is about using hardship to become stronger. It is about developing the ability to keep learning when motivation fades, to keep improving when progress is invisible, and to keep moving forward when every obstacle suggests stopping. Those who master this approach do not just become better learners, they become unstoppable in every pursuit they choose. No amount of talent can replace resilience. Those who rely on natural ability will eventually meet a challenge they cannot overcome easily. Those who rely on persistence will overcome every challenge, no matter how difficult. The world does not belong to those who start with the most talent. It belongs to those who refuse to stop improving, no matter how long it takes. Persistence is the key to lifelong learning, but resilience alone is not enough. The way challenges are perceived determines whether they become stepping stones or barriers. Many people see difficulty as an obstacle, something that blocks their path and discourages them from moving forward. But those who achieve true mastery see challenges differently. They do not view hardship as something to avoid, but as something to embrace. They understand that every difficulty contains within it the opportunity for growth, refinement, and transformation. The mind naturally resists discomfort. It seeks the easiest path, the one with the least resistance. This is a survival mechanism designed to protect against unnecessary struggle. But in the modern world, this instinct often works against personal development. Growth does not come from ease, but from struggle. Every challenge presents a choice: to retreat into comfort or to push forward and emerge stronger. The people who consistently progress in life are those who have trained their minds to see struggle not as suffering, but as the raw material for improvement. Rewiring the mind to see challenges as opportunities is not about pretending that struggle is enjoyable. It is about shifting focus from what is lost to what is gained. Most people, when faced with difficulty, dwell on the inconvenience, the discomfort, or the potential for failure. They focus on the immediate pain rather than the long-term benefit. This mindset weakens them. It makes every challenge feel heavier than it really is. It turns small obstacles into overwhelming burdens. Those who shift their perspective, however, begin to see challenges as training. They recognize that hardship is not an enemy, but a teacher. The strongest minds are those that no longer fear difficulty. They do not shrink in the face of adversity. They do not see struggle as unfair or unnecessary. They accept it as an essential part of progress. This mental shift removes hesitation. It eliminates the self-doubt that keeps so many people trapped in cycles of avoidance. Instead of spending time wishing for an easier path, they focus on building the strength to handle the one in front of them. Most people only grow when forced to. They wait until circumstances demand improvement. They do not voluntarily step into discomfort, and as a result, their development is slow. They avoid anything that makes them feel unprepared, anything that exposes their weaknesses, anything that requires more effort than they are used to giving. But those who see challenges as opportunities do not wait to be forced into growth. They seek it out. They put themselves in situations that demand more from them because they understand that this is how real progress happens. Rewiring the mind requires breaking free from the belief that struggle means something is wrong. This is one of the biggest misconceptions people hold. They assume that if something is difficult, it is a sign that they are not meant to do it, that they are not good enough, that they should turn back. But in reality, struggle is a sign that they are exactly where they need to be. No skill is mastered without difficulty. No strength is built without resistance. No breakthrough is achieved without overcoming something that once seemed impossible. There is a reason that those who have endured the most adversity often develop the deepest wisdom. They have learned, through experience, that challenges are not meant to break them, but to shape them. They have proven to themselves, again and again, that they are capable of overcoming more than they once believed. This proof creates confidence that cannot be faked. It is not based on external validation, but on direct experience. They know that they can handle difficulty because they have done it before, and they trust that they will do it again. The way a person interprets difficulty determines how they respond to it. If they see a challenge as a threat, they will resist it. They will try to avoid it, hoping for an easier way. This avoidance weakens them. It reinforces the idea that struggle should be feared, that discomfort is something to run from. Over time, this mindset leads to stagnation. People become afraid to take risks, to try new things, to step outside of their comfort zones. They remain trapped in routines that feel safe, but do not allow for growth. Those who see challenges as opportunities respond differently. They do not avoid difficulty. They do not hesitate when things become hard. They lean into struggle, knowing that the discomfort they feel today will become strength tomorrow. They understand that the mind, like the body, adapts to stress. The more it is exposed to challenge, the stronger it becomes. The first time something is difficult, it may feel overwhelming. The second time, it feels manageable. The third time, it becomes second nature. This is how mastery is built, not through ease, but through repeated exposure to resistance. One of the greatest benefits of rewiring the mind in this way is that fear loses its power. Most people are controlled by fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of not being good enough. These fears dictate their actions, causing them to hesitate, to doubt, to hold back. But when challenges are seen as opportunities, fear is no longer a reason to stop. It becomes a signal to move forward. It is no longer an enemy, but a guide, pointing toward the areas that require growth. Difficulties do not disappear when this mindset is adopted. The difference is in how they are experienced. Those who resist hardship suffer unnecessarily. They add mental weight to their struggles by focusing on the wrong things. They dwell on how unfair it is, how much easier things are for others, how much they wish circumstances were different. This kind of thinking does not change reality. It only makes it harder to deal with. Those who embrace challenges remove this extra weight. They do not waste energy on complaining or wishing for different circumstances. They accept what is in front of them and focus entirely on what they can control. The most resilient individuals are those who do not see failure as a personal defeat. They do not attach their self-worth to outcomes. They do not allow mistakes to define them. Instead, they see every failure as a lesson. They extract value from every experience, even the painful ones. They treat difficulties as training, refining their skills and strengthening their mindset with each new challenge. This is why they continue to rise while others remain stuck. They do not fear setbacks because they know that every setback contains the blueprint for future success. People who struggle with confidence often assume that confidence comes from success. They believe that once they achieve enough, once they prove themselves enough, then they will feel secure. But confidence does not come from success. It comes from the ability to handle failure without losing momentum. The most confident individuals are not those who never struggle, but those who know with certainty that they can face struggle without breaking. This certainty is built by repeatedly facing challenges and overcoming them. The biggest misconception about success is that it comes from avoiding failure. Many assume that those who reach the highest levels do so because they never encounter obstacles. But the opposite is true. The strongest individuals are not those who have avoided difficulty, but those who have learned to use it. They have rewired their minds to see every challenge as a tool for growth. They do not resist hardship. They do not waste time wishing things were easier. They take what is in front of them and use it to become stronger. Mental resilience is not something a person is born with. It is built through experience, through repeated exposure to difficulty. The more challenges a person faces, the more opportunities they have to prove to themselves that they can overcome. This proof builds confidence that cannot be shaken. It removes the need for external validation because they no longer doubt their own ability. They have faced difficulty before, and they know they can face it again. Rewiring the mind is not a one-time shift, but a continuous process. Every new challenge presents an opportunity to strengthen this way of thinking. Each time a person chooses to lean into discomfort rather than avoid it, they reinforce the belief that struggle is beneficial rather than threatening. Over time, this belief becomes deeply ingrained. Challenges are no longer seen as roadblocks, but as necessary steps toward something greater. The world does not change to accommodate comfort. Challenges will always exist. Difficulty will always arise. The only thing that can be controlled is the way they are interpreted. Those who learn to see challenges as opportunities do not live easier lives, but they live stronger ones. They are not controlled by fear. They are not paralyzed by failure. They do not hesitate when obstacles appear. They move forward with certainty, knowing that every challenge is another step in their evolution. They do not wait for the perfect conditions. They take whatever is in front of them and use it to become something greater than they were before. The ability to see challenges as opportunities is a powerful shift, but even those who embrace difficulty still face an internal battle: self-doubt. It is the quiet force that whispers hesitation before action, that questions whether success is possible, that fuels the fear of being inadequate. No matter how skilled or knowledgeable a person becomes, if self-doubt controls their mind, progress will always be slower, decisions will always be second-guessed, and confidence will always be fragile. The Stoic approach to overcoming self-doubt does not rely on empty affirmations or temporary boosts of motivation. It builds something deeper, unshakable self-trust, the kind of confidence that is not dependent on success, external validation, or the approval of others. Self-doubt thrives in uncertainty. When the mind is unsure, it fills the gap with fear, assuming the worst possible outcomes. It convinces people that failure is inevitable, that they are unprepared, that they are not good enough. This hesitation leads to overthinking, paralysis, and inaction. Those who struggle with self-doubt are often more capable than they believe, but their hesitation prevents them from ever reaching their full potential. The ones who move forward despite uncertainty, despite fear, despite not having all the answers, are the ones who eventually succeed. The difference is not in ability, but in the willingness to act before feeling completely ready. The mind tends to create problems where none exist. It takes minor concerns and turns them into overwhelming doubts. A person may be fully prepared for a task, yet they hesitate because their mind is filled with what-if scenarios. They fear judgment, rejection, or failure, but none of these fears exist in reality. They are created in the mind. The Stoic approach is to focus on what is within control, actions, effort, and mindset, while disregarding the noise of unnecessary fears. Doubt is nothing more than mental resistance, and resistance is only powerful when it is obeyed. The reason self-doubt is so persistent is that it is fueled by past failures, criticism, and conditioning. The mind remembers every mistake, every moment of embarrassment, every time expectations were not met. It holds on to these experiences and uses them as proof that failure will happen again. This creates a cycle where doubt becomes the default reaction to any challenge. But the past does not determine the future. Just because something went wrong does not mean it will go wrong again. Growth is not about avoiding mistakes, but about learning from them and proving to oneself, over time, that failure does not define ability. True confidence is not the absence of self-doubt, but the ability to act despite it. Many assume that confident people never question themselves, that they move through life without hesitation. But this is not true. Every person, no matter how skilled, experiences moments of uncertainty. The difference is in how they respond. Those who trust themselves do not wait for fear to disappear before they take action. They take action while fear is still present. They move forward before they feel completely prepared. This is what builds confidence. Not waiting to feel ready, but proving through action that readiness is not a requirement. People who struggle with self-doubt often look for external validation to reassure them. They seek approval, waiting for others to confirm their worth. This creates dependency, making confidence fragile. The moment external validation is removed, doubt returns. True confidence does not rely on constant reassurance. It is built internally, through repeated proof that effort and persistence matter more than perfection. When a person stops seeking validation and starts trusting their own judgment, self-doubt loses its grip. The greatest trap of self-doubt is comparison. When people measure themselves against others, they always find reasons to feel inadequate. They focus on those who are further ahead, who seem more successful, who make things look effortless. This creates the illusion that confidence is something others have naturally, while they themselves are lacking. But confidence is not a trait that some are born with and others are not. It is a skill developed through experience, failure, and resilience. Those who seem effortlessly confident have simply faced more challenges, made more mistakes, and learned to trust themselves through repeated action. Overthinking is one of the main ways self-doubt manifests. The mind runs through endless possibilities, analyzing every potential mistake, predicting every way things could go wrong. This creates hesitation, leading to missed opportunities. The Stoic solution is to simplify decisions. Instead of drowning in what-ifs, focus on what can be done now. Instead of waiting for the perfect moment, take action with what is available. Perfection is an illusion that prevents progress. The only way to develop confidence is to move forward, even when certainty is not guaranteed. A person who doubts themselves often fears failure more than anything. They believe that making mistakes will confirm their worst fears, that they are not good enough. But failure is not proof of incompetence. It is proof of effort. The only way to avoid failure is to never try, and those who never try remain trapped in self-doubt forever. Confidence grows not by avoiding failure, but by facing it, learning from it, and proving that mistakes are temporary, not permanent judgments of worth. The mind strengthens what it focuses on. If attention is given to doubts, fears, and insecurities, they become stronger. If attention is directed toward effort, progress, and small wins, confidence begins to build. Many people reinforce their own self-doubt without realizing it. They replay past mistakes in their minds, dwell on negative experiences, and assume the worst about themselves. The Stoic approach is to train the mind to focus on what is productive. Instead of asking, "What if I fail?" ask, "What can I do right now to improve?" Instead of assuming incompetence, assume the ability to learn. This shift in focus changes everything. Another source of self-doubt is the fear of judgment. Many hesitate to take action because they worry about how they will be perceived. They fear looking foolish, being criticized, or not meeting expectations. But in reality, most people are too occupied with their own concerns to spend much time judging others. The weight of external opinion is often exaggerated in the mind. Those who are confident do not waste energy on worrying about how they are perceived. They act based on what aligns with their goals and values, not based on fear of judgment. Confidence is not about always being right. It is about being willing to take action despite uncertainty. Those who wait until they have every answer, until they are completely sure, until they feel no fear, will never move forward. The Stoic approach to confidence is built on the acceptance that uncertainty is part of life. No one knows the outcome of every decision. No one is free from doubt all the time. The difference is in whether a person allows uncertainty to control them or whether they choose to act anyway. Building confidence requires proof. The mind must see evidence that effort leads to results. This is why action is the most effective way to overcome doubt. No amount of thinking, analyzing, or preparing will replace the experience of taking action. A person who struggles with self-doubt does not need more reassurance. They need more experiences of overcoming doubt through action. Each time they move forward despite fear, their confidence strengthens. Over time, these small acts build into an unshakable belief in their own ability. Self-doubt will always exist in some form, but it does not have to be a barrier. It can be an indicator that growth is happening, that something important is at stake, that the next step is worth taking. Those who refuse to let doubt dictate their actions develop a kind of confidence that cannot be broken. They do not need perfect conditions, guaranteed success, or the approval of others. They trust themselves because they have proven, through experience, that they can handle whatever comes next. The world is not divided into confident people and doubtful people. The only difference is in how doubt is handled. Those who let it stop them remain in the same place. Those who move forward despite it develop the confidence that others admire. The mind will always offer reasons to hesitate, but hesitation is a choice. Those who act, even in the face of doubt, become unstoppable, not because they never fear failure, but because they refuse to let fear control their lives. Confidence is not built through comfort, but through continuous effort. Those who stop pushing themselves eventually lose the belief that they can handle more. Growth is what keeps both individuals and civilizations strong, while stagnation is the slow decay that leads to inevitable decline. The greatest empires in history were not defeated by outside forces alone. They collapsed from within, weakened by complacency, excess, and the illusion that their position was permanent. The same applies to individuals. Those who stop learning, stop challenging themselves, and stop adapting will experience the same fate as the fallen empires of the past. Rome was once the most powerful civilization on Earth. It was built on discipline, resilience, and an unshakable drive to expand and improve. But over time, it became consumed by its own success. The very traits that once made it great were slowly replaced by comfort, indulgence, and a resistance to change. It no longer pushed itself to grow, but instead sought to maintain its position without effort. This is how all decline begins, not through a single catastrophic event, but through the gradual weakening of discipline, purpose, and the will to improve. The decline of Rome is a lesson in what happens when growth is abandoned. In the early days, Rome was defined by struggle. It had no choice but to fight, to build, to expand, and to refine its systems. Hardship created strength. But as it grew wealthier, the urgency to improve faded. Leaders became more focused on luxury than on governance. The population became more focused on entertainment than on responsibility. The military, once the strongest force in the world, became undisciplined and corrupt. The empire rotted from the inside long before it was attacked from the outside. The same pattern occurs in individuals. Growth stops. The moment struggle is avoided. The moment comfort becomes more important than progress, decline begins. Nothing remains strong without constant refinement. Muscles weaken without exercise. Intelligence fades without learning. Character erodes without challenge. Those who assume they can stay the same without effort are deceiving themselves. History shows that every great civilization that stopped growing collapsed, not because they were suddenly incapable, but because they no longer demanded improvement from themselves. The same applies to individuals. Strength is not something that is achieved once and maintained effortlessly. It must be reinforced daily through disciplined action. The Stoics understood that decline does not happen overnight. It begins in small ways, by choosing comfort over discipline, by avoiding difficulty instead of embracing it, by allowing distractions to take priority over purpose. A person who once pursued knowledge with intensity may one day decide they already know enough. A person who once worked hard to improve may start to believe that they have earned the right to stop trying. This is the beginning of personal collapse. It does not feel like failure at first. It feels like ease, like relief, like finally being able to relax. But what follows is the slow erosion of everything that was once built. Rome's fall was not a single event, but a long process of decay. Its leaders stopped making difficult decisions. They prioritized short-term pleasures over long-term stability. The population, once known for its resilience and discipline, became entitled and complacent. It is easy to criticize these choices in hindsight, but the truth is that this pattern repeats itself in people's lives every day. The moment a person believes they no longer need to grow, they begin their own decline. The only way to remain strong is to keep pushing beyond what is comfortable. The mistake that many civilizations and individuals make is assuming that past success guarantees future stability. Rome once believed that its dominance was permanent, that its position as the center of the world was unshakable. This illusion blinded it to the warning signs of decay. It did not realize that without continued effort, even the greatest empire could fall. Individuals make the same mistake when they assume that previous achievements mean they no longer need to strive. They assume that because they were once disciplined, they will always be disciplined. That because they once had a sharp mind, they will always be intelligent. That because they once had confidence, they will never struggle with doubt. But strength is not permanent. It must be reinforced continuously, or it will fade. One of the reasons growth stops is the pursuit of comfort. When a civilization reaches a level of prosperity where struggle is no longer necessary for survival, it becomes easy to shift focus toward pleasure rather than progress. Rome, at its height, was known for its excess. Gladiator games, lavish feasts, extravagant buildings. These were the distractions that replaced the hard work and discipline that had built the empire in the first place. The same happens in personal life. When effort is no longer required for survival, many choose comfort over challenge. They seek entertainment rather than education. They prioritize temporary pleasure over long-term improvement. Over time, this weakens both character and ability. A civilization that stops growing becomes vulnerable to external threats. Rome believed itself to be untouchable, but when it was eventually attacked, it was too weak to defend itself. The same happens to individuals. Those who stop improving become unprepared for adversity. When difficulty arises, they lack the resilience to handle it. They are caught off guard, overwhelmed by challenges they once could have overcome. The greatest protection against hardship is constant self-improvement. Strength must be maintained, not assumed. Discipline is what keeps decline at bay. The moment a civilization or an individual stops requiring discipline from itself, deterioration begins. Rome was once known for its strict military training, its efficient governance, and its unwavering work ethic. But as wealth and ease replaced necessity, these qualities disappeared. Soldiers no longer trained with the same intensity. Politicians no longer governed with the same integrity. Citizens no longer worked with the same determination. The same happens to those who once had strong habits but allow them to slip. They wake up later, cut corners, avoid difficult tasks, and slowly become weaker versions of themselves, not because they are incapable, but because they stopped demanding more from themselves. The strongest civilizations and individuals are those who never allow themselves to believe they have arrived. They remain in a state of constant improvement, refusing to become complacent. They do not mistake past success for permanent security. They understand that growth is the only way to ensure survival. Those who fail to recognize this truth eventually experience the consequences of their own neglect. The fall of Rome serves as a warning. It was not lack of intelligence, lack of resources, or lack of opportunity that caused its collapse. It was the decision, repeated over many years, to prioritize comfort over discipline, pleasure over responsibility, and ease over effort. The same fate awaits anyone who allows themselves to stop growing. No one is immune to decline. The only way to remain strong is to continuously refine the mind, body, and character. Many people believe that once they have achieved something, they can relax. They see growth as a phase rather than a lifelong commitment. But those who remain at the top in any area of life are those who never stop pushing themselves. The greatest minds continue learning. The strongest individuals continue training. The most disciplined people continue refining their habits. They do not allow comfort to replace effort. They do not believe that they have earned the right to stop improving. This is why they continue to thrive while others decline. The Stoic lesson from Rome's fall is simple. Nothing stays strong without effort. A civilization, like a person, will always move in one of two directions, toward growth or toward decline. There is no standing still. The moment growth stops, weakness begins. Those who understand this truth remain disciplined, not because they are forced to be, but because they recognize that it is the only way to prevent collapse. The strongest individuals do not wait for hardship to remind them to improve. They train their minds and bodies consistently. They refine their skills continuously. They push themselves even when they do not feel like it. They understand that waiting for struggle to force growth is a dangerous gamble. Those who prepare in advance, who stay sharp, who maintain discipline even when it is not required, are the ones who remain unshaken when challenges arise. Rome's story has been repeated throughout history. Every great civilization that believed itself to be invincible eventually fell. The lesson is clear. Growth is not optional. The moment a person stops striving, they begin to decline. The only way to remain strong, to remain capable, to remain unbreakable, is to continuously push forward. Those who accept this truth will never experience the slow decay that destroys both civilizations and individuals. They will always be prepared, always be improving, and always remain in control of their own destiny. The decline of great civilizations was not due to external threats alone, but to the slow erosion of discipline. The moment a society or an individual stops pushing forward, weakness sets in. Growth requires effort, and effort is uncomfortable. The ability to keep improving, even when there is no immediate reward, even when progress feels invisible, even when every excuse to stop is present. That is what separates those who rise from those who fade. Discipline is not about motivation. It is not about waiting for the perfect moment to act. It is about doing what needs to be done, regardless of how it feels. Most people rely on emotions to dictate their actions. If they feel inspired, they move forward. If they feel tired, they stop. This inconsistency prevents real progress. Those who cultivate discipline do not wait for inspiration. They act with or without it. They do not make decisions based on comfort. They make them based on commitment. The human mind naturally resists difficulty. It seeks ease, repetition, and routine. When something requires effort, it creates excuses, rationalizing why now is not the right time. It tells stories about why rest is necessary, why it would be better to wait, why discomfort should be avoided. But these are illusions. The mind is not protecting success. It is protecting comfort. The only way to break free from this trap is to stop negotiating with it. The disciplined person does not entertain thoughts of avoidance. They remove the option to quit before it even arises. The reason discipline is rare is that it demands consistency. It is easy to work hard when energy is high, when conditions are favorable, when results are visible. But true discipline is doing the work when no one is watching, when exhaustion sets in, when progress is slow. This is why so many start, but so few continue. They assume that effort should always feel rewarding. They expect motivation to last. But discipline is what remains when motivation disappears. It is the ability to continue long after the excitement has faded. Growth happens at the edge of discomfort. Most people stop before they reach this point. The moment something feels too difficult, they retreat. They assume that struggle means they are failing, that fatigue means they should slow down, that doubt means they should reconsider. But all progress happens in this space. The mind and body adapt only when they are forced to. If difficulty is always avoided, strength is never developed. Those who understand this push past their initial resistance. They know that discomfort is not a sign to stop, but a sign that improvement is happening. Most people set goals, but never build the systems to reach them. They rely on willpower, assuming that their desire will carry them through. But willpower fades. Excitement weakens. The disciplined person does not depend on fleeting feelings. They create habits that remove the need for decision-making. They do not ask themselves if they feel like working. They work. They do not wait until they are in the mood to train. They train. Their systems ensure that action happens regardless of circumstances. Excuses always sound reasonable in the moment. The mind presents them as logical, as necessary, as unavoidable. But every excuse is a small surrender. It is a moment of weakness disguised as wisdom. The disciplined person recognizes this and refuses to entertain thoughts that encourage quitting. They do not waste energy debating whether or not to act. They have already decided. This is what makes them unstoppable. They do not negotiate with the part of themselves that seeks comfort. They silence it through action. Comfort is the enemy of progress. The more a person indulges in ease, the harder it becomes to embrace difficulty. Every time an effort is avoided, the habit of quitting becomes stronger. The body and mind adapt to what they're exposed to. If they are conditioned to avoid struggle, struggle will always feel overwhelming. But if they are conditioned to embrace discomfort, it becomes normal. The hardest part of discipline is the beginning. Once effort becomes routine, it no longer feels like suffering. It becomes a standard. The mind always seeks the paths of least resistance. It will choose distraction over focus, delay over action, justification over accountability. The only way to counter this is through structure. A person who leaves discipline to chance will fail. Those who succeed build environments that make effort automatic. They remove distractions. They set clear routines. They eliminate choices that lead to weakness. They do not rely on self-control alone. They create conditions that make discipline inevitable. Progress is invisible in the beginning. This is why so many give up. They expect to see immediate results. When they do not, they assume they are failing. But improvement does not happen all at once. It is the accumulation of small, consistent actions over time. The disciplined person understands this. They do not need instant gratification. They trust the process. They continue even when there is no proof that their efforts are working. They know that breakthroughs are the result of persistence, not perfection. One of the greatest barriers to discipline is the illusion of balance. Many convince themselves that they need to take it easy, that they deserve a break, that too much effort is unhealthy. But this is often an excuse disguised as wisdom. Growth requires sacrifice. Those who achieve extraordinary results do not do so by following average routines. They demand more from themselves. They understand that excellence is not the result of moderation. It is the result of intensity. Self-discipline is not something a person is born with. It is a skill that is built, one decision at a time. Every time a person follows through on a commitment, their discipline strengthens. Every time they give into excuses, their discipline weakens. The small choices made daily determine whether a person becomes stronger or weaker over time. There is no neutral ground. Either discipline is being built or it is being eroded. There's a cost to discipline, but there's also a cost to the lack of it. The difference is that the cost of discipline is paid up front, in sweat, in discomfort, in effort. The cost of weakness is paid later, in regret, in missed opportunities, in lost potential. Those who delay effort only make the struggle harder in the future. The disciplined person understands that struggle is unavoidable. The only choice is whether to face it now, on their own terms, or later, when circumstances force it upon them. Most people fail not because they lack talent, but because they lack consistency. They put in effort sporadically, expecting occasional bursts of motivation to carry them forward. But mastery requires more. It requires showing up every day, regardless of circumstances. It requires treating discipline as a non-negotiable standard, not as something that happens only when conditions are perfect. Those who succeed do not work only when they feel like it. They work because they have decided that they will. Discipline is built through small victories. It is not about making radical changes overnight, but about proving to oneself again and again that commitment is stronger than resistance. Each time a person follows through on an action, they reinforce the belief that they are capable of control. Each time they quit, they reinforce the belief that struggle is too much. Over time, these small decisions shape identity. The disciplined person does not see themselves as someone who occasionally works hard. They see themselves as someone who always follows through. The greatest mistake people make is assuming that discipline is a matter of willpower. But willpower is unreliable. It fluctuates. It weakens under stress. The disciplined person does not depend on it. They create habits, routines, and structures that ensure consistency. They make effort a way of life, not a temporary burst of energy. They know that if they rely on willpower alone, they will eventually fail. Instead, they build systems that make effort automatic. The mind always seeks reasons to stop. It tells stories about why now is not the right time, why there are more important things to focus on, why rest is necessary. The disciplined person does not entertain these stories. They act in spite of them. They know that the voice of hesitation will always exist, but they have trained themselves not to listen. They replace doubt with action, uncertainty with movement, hesitation with commitment. There's no secret to discipline. It is simply the willingness to keep going when everything suggests stopping. It is the refusal to accept comfort over progress. It is the choice to act again and again, regardless of how difficult it feels. Those who master this ability become unshakable. They do not wait for the right mood, the right time, or the right circumstances. They create their own momentum. They train their minds to see struggle not as suffering, but as a necessary part of strength. The difference between those who reach their potential and those who fall short is not talent. It is not intelligence. It is not luck. It is the ability to keep going, the ability to stay disciplined when motivation fades, the ability to do the work when it feels impossible, the ability to refuse to quit. This is what separates the weak from the strong, the average from the exceptional. Those who accept this truth will never be controlled by comfort. They will always be prepared, always improving and always ahead. Discipline creates strength, but complacency destroys it. The moment effort is replaced with comfort, progress slows. What once required commitment becomes something taken for granted. The greatest threat to growth is not failure. It is stagnation. When improvement is no longer demanded, skills begin to fade, ambition weakens, and potential is left untapped. Complacency is the slow poison that convinces people they have done enough when there is still much more to achieve. Staying in the comfort zone feels safe, but it comes at a cost. The mind becomes dull when it is no longer challenged. The body weakens when it is no longer tested. The person who once pushed forward now stands still, unaware that standing still is just another form of moving backward. Comfort is deceptive. It convinces people that maintaining the status quo is the same as progress. But in reality, what is not improving is declining. The mind adapts to whatever it is exposed to. If it is constantly tested, it becomes stronger, sharper, and more resilient. But if it is left unchallenged, it atrophies. The same applies to skill, discipline, and confidence. The more they are exercised, the more powerful they become. The less they are used, the faster they fade. A person who once thrived in struggle but later chooses ease will not remain the same. They will decline slowly at first, until one day they no longer recognize the person they have become. The comfort zone is a trap. It offers relief but removes progress. It provides certainty but eliminates growth. It makes life predictable but takes away its potential. Those who stay within it convince themselves that they are maintaining what they have built. But what they do not realize is that maintenance is an illusion. Nothing stays the same. A body that is not strengthened becomes weaker. A skill that is not refined becomes dull. A mind that is not challenged becomes slow. Without continuous effort, the very things that were once earned begin to erode. Those who refuse to leave their comfort zone often justify it by saying they do not want to risk losing what they have. But in trying to protect what they have built, they unknowingly destroy it. The person who avoids challenge because they fear failure will never realize that the greater risk is refusing to try. The only way to keep what has been earned is to keep earning it. Strength does not remain simply because it was once achieved. It must be maintained through effort, reinforced through challenge, and protected by refusing to settle for ease. Most people wait for struggle to force them out of their comfort zone. They do not leave voluntarily. They wait until life demands it, until circumstances make it impossible to remain where they are. But by then, they are unprepared. Those who refuse to grow when they have the choice will be forced to grow when they have no other option. The only difference is that voluntary growth builds strength, while forced growth exposes weakness. Those who push themselves before life pushes them will always have the advantage. Fear keeps people locked in place. The fear of failure, the fear of uncertainty, the fear of effort without immediate reward. But fear is a liar. It makes discomfort seem like danger. It makes challenges feel overwhelming. It makes struggle appear unnecessary. But the truth is that fear fades when it is confronted. Every time a person steps outside their comfort zone, their capacity expands. What once felt impossible becomes normal. What once seemed too difficult becomes routine. This is the path to real strength, not avoiding discomfort, but seeking it out. The moment a person chooses ease over growth, they are making a decision about their future. They are accepting that their potential will remain unfulfilled. They are choosing to limit themselves. This choice may not seem significant at first, but its effects compound over time. What starts as a small step away from effort becomes a long journey into mediocrity. The person who once had ambition now settles. The person who once embraced challenge now avoids it. The person who once pursued mastery now accepts being average. The greatest people in history were not those who stayed in their comfort zones. They were those who faced challenge after challenge, refusing to settle. They were not the smartest, not the most talented, not the most naturally gifted. They were simply the ones who kept pushing, the ones who never allowed comfort to replace ambition, the ones who understood that progress is a lifelong commitment, not a temporary effort. Complacency leads to regret. It may not be felt immediately, but over time, the realization sets in. The person who once had big goals but never pursued them looks back and wonders what could have been. The person who once had the discipline to push through difficulty but later gave up sees the opportunities they missed. Regret is not caused by failure. It is caused by knowing that more was possible but choosing not to reach for it. The reason most people do not escape the comfort zone is that they do not see the danger in staying there. They assume that if things are fine now, they will always be fine. They assume that if they stop improving, they will still remain capable. But what they fail to see is that decline is not immediate. It is gradual, it is slow, it is silent. Until one day they wake up and realize they are no longer who they once were. Their skills have faded, their discipline has weakened, their ambition has disappeared. Not because of any single failure, but because of years of settling. The greatest mistake is believing that effort can be postponed, that there will be time later to improve, to grow, to push forward. But time does not wait. The person who delays effort is not staying the same. They are falling behind. Those who succeed understand that every day matters, that every action counts, that progress is not made in sudden leaps, but in small, consistent steps. They do not wait until they feel ready. They do not wait for the right time. They move now because they know that every day spent waiting is a day wasted. The comfort zone is seductive because it removes uncertainty. It provides predictability. It makes life easier. But ease is not the goal. The goal is to become stronger, to become wiser, to become better. And none of that happens in comfort. It happens in difficulty, in struggle, in effort that feels exhausting but is necessary. Those who break free from their comfort zone understand this. They know that challenge is not something to be feared, it is something to be embraced. Those who stay in their comfort zones never realize their full potential. They never know what they could have become if they had pushed just a little harder, if they had taken just a few more risks, if they had been willing to struggle just a little longer. The comfort zone does not protect people, it limits them. It keeps them small. It keeps them trapped in routines that offer security, but not fulfillment. The solution is to make discomfort a habit. To do something every day that feels slightly difficult, slightly challenging, slightly beyond what feels comfortable. To make progress, not in sudden bursts, but in steady, continuous effort. The more this is done, the less fear holds power. The mind adapts. It becomes stronger. It no longer sees struggle as a threat, but as a necessity. The people who achieve the most in life are not the ones who had the best opportunities. They are the ones who refused to let comfort control them. They are the ones who stepped forward when others stepped back, who took action when others hesitated, who chose effort over ease, knowing that while comfort feels good in the moment, progress is what truly matters in the end. The greatest battle is always against complacency. Those who win that battle never stop growing. They never allow comfort to weaken them. They never assume that they have done enough. They push forward every day, knowing that the real danger is not failure, but settling for less than what they are capable of achieving. Those who refuse to stay in their comfort zones will always be ahead, not because they are lucky, not because they are naturally gifted, but because they are willing to do what others will not. They are willing to struggle. They are willing to grow. They are willing to become something more. Breaking free from the comfort zone is essential for growth, but sustaining that growth requires something even more powerful: long-term thinking. Without it, discipline fades, ambition weakens, and the temptation for quick rewards overtakes the commitment to lasting success. Most people fail, not because they lack ability, but because they lack patience. They want results now. They want immediate validation. They want to skip the struggle and enjoy the rewards without putting in the time. But anything truly valuable, strength, mastery, wisdom, requires patience. It demands the ability to resist short-term gratification for something greater in the future. Modern life conditions people to expect everything instantly. Convenience is mistaken for efficiency, and speed is mistaken for progress. People crave immediate feedback, whether from social media, entertainment, or success itself. They struggle to work towards something that does not give them an immediate return. This impatience weakens their ability to build anything meaningful. The best results take time. Those who cannot delay gratification will never achieve them. The mind must be trained to think long-term, to endure effort without immediate payoff, and to see beyond the temporary discomfort that comes with progress. The difference between those who succeed and those who do not is not intelligence or talent. It is the ability to make decisions based on the future rather than the present. The greatest achievements in history did not happen overnight. They were built over years of unseen effort. The most disciplined individuals did not wait to feel motivated. They acted even when progress was invisible. The strongest minds did not seek immediate satisfaction. They were willing to endure temporary struggle for something greater. Patience is not passive. It is not waiting idly for something to happen. It is active endurance. It is making daily choices that align with long-term goals, even when those choices feel tedious. even when progress is slow, even when every impulse says to take the easy way out. People often assume that patience means doing nothing, but in reality, patience is the willingness to do the hard work without needing instant results. It's the refusal to be controlled by the desire for immediate rewards. One of the greatest obstacles to long-term thinking is distraction. The modern world is designed to keep people addicted to quick rewards. Notifications, entertainment, advertisements, everything is engineered to capture attention for short bursts, making it difficult to focus on anything that requires sustained effort. People start working toward a goal, but get pulled away by distractions that offer instant satisfaction. They abandon the slow path for something that feels more rewarding in the moment, only to realize later that they have made no real progress. This cycle repeats endlessly unless it is consciously broken. The ability to delay gratification is one of the strongest predictors of success. Studies in psychology have shown that children who are able to resist immediate rewards in favor of larger future rewards tend to achieve more in life. This principle applies at every stage of life. Those who can say no to short-term pleasure in favor of long-term growth will always rise above those who seek constant comfort. The difference between reaching potential and falling short is often a simple choice, whether to endure difficulty for future rewards or give in to ease for temporary relief. Most people overestimate what they can achieve in a short period and underestimate what they can achieve over a long period. They expect immediate progress, and when it does not come, they assume they are failing. But real change is slow. It is built through small, repeated actions. Those who can resist the urge to chase quick results and instead commit to steady, consistent effort will always be the ones who succeed. They do not measure progress by speed. They measure it by direction. They understand that a slow climb is better than a fast decline. Short-term pleasure is a trap. It feels rewarding in the moment, but it often leads to long-term regret. The person who prioritizes entertainment over effort, distraction over discipline, ease over challenge, will eventually realize that they have traded their future for momentary relief. The strongest individuals do not make decisions based on what feels good now. They make decisions based on what will serve them in the future. They understand that the most valuable things take time, and they are willing to wait. Building patience requires training the mind to think beyond the present moment. It requires seeing setbacks not as failures, but as necessary parts of the process. It requires trusting that effort, even when it does not produce immediate results, is still moving things forward. Those who cannot do this will always be controlled by impulse, jumping from one thing to the next, never sticking with anything long enough to see real success. They will always wonder why they feel stuck, why progress is slow, why their goals remain out of reach. Long-term thinking removes unnecessary stress. Many of the frustrations people experience come from expecting results too quickly. They want to master a skill in weeks instead of years. They want financial success without years of disciplined work. They want to be fit without the patience to train consistently. This impatience leads to frustration, and frustration leads to quitting. Those who adopt a long-term mindset avoid this trap. They do not become discouraged by slow progress because they do not expect fast results. They trust the process, knowing that success is not a single event, but a series of small decisions made over time. Delaying gratification does not mean denying pleasure forever. It means prioritizing the right pleasures. The pleasure of improvement over the pleasure of distraction. the pleasure of long-term success over the pleasure of temporary relief. Those who lack this ability fall into destructive habits. They seek comfort over challenge, pleasure over purpose, ease over effort. And in doing so, they sacrifice what they could have been for what feels good in the moment. One of the biggest barriers to long-term thinking is uncertainty. People hesitate to invest time and effort into something if they are not sure it will pay off. They want guarantees before they commit. But the strongest individuals act without needing certainty. They trust that effort itself is worthwhile, that the process itself is valuable, that even if the results are not immediate, the act of discipline strengthens them. This mindset is what separates those who build great things from those who wait forever for the perfect moment. The greatest mistake people make is assuming they have time to waste. They put off effort because they believe they can start later. They tell themselves they will commit when they feel ready, when they have more energy, when life is less stressful. But later never comes. There is always another excuse, another distraction, another reason to delay. Those who succeed understand that time does not wait. Every day wasted is a day that could have been used for growth. Every decision made in the present affects the future. Training the mind to delay gratification requires daily practice. It means making small choices that reinforce patience, choosing effort over ease, choosing learning over distraction, choosing consistency over short bursts of motivation. The more this is done, the easier it becomes. The more the mind is trained to focus on the long term, the less temptation short-term pleasures hold. Discipline is built in small moments, in daily decisions, in resisting the impulse to choose comfort over progress. The strongest people in history did not achieve greatness by chasing instant results. They built something over time, brick by brick, action by action, day by day. They resisted the urge to quit, to take shortcuts, to seek quick rewards. They understood that real success is earned, not given. Those who master this mindset never stop improving. They do not burn out because they do not expect everything to happen overnight. They move forward with patience, knowing that consistency is more powerful than intensity. The ability to delay gratification is the foundation of every great achievement. It is what allows people to stay committed when others give up. It is what separates those who merely dream from those who actually achieve. It is the difference between those who reach their full potential and those who settle for less. Those who understand this truth live differently. They do not waste time chasing what is easy. They do not sacrifice their future for momentary pleasure. They move with purpose, with discipline, with patience, knowing that the rewards of long-term effort will always be greater than anything found in the comfort of the present. Long-term thinking creates discipline, but without self-control, even the best intentions can be destroyed in seconds. A single emotional reaction, a single moment of weakness, a single impulsive decision can undo months or years of effort. Those who fail to master their emotions remain prisoners to them. They may have the best plans, the strongest ambitions, the clearest goals, but if they cannot control how they respond to pressure, setbacks, or provocation, they will never reach their full potential. The strongest people in history were not those who never felt emotion, but those who refused to let emotion dictate their actions. They experienced frustration, anger, fear, and doubt like everyone else, but they did not allow those feelings to control their decisions. They did not lash out when provoked. They did not abandon their discipline when discouraged. They did not crumble when faced with adversity. They remained steady, acting with clarity even in chaos. This is what separates those who succeed from those who self-destruct. The ability to control oneself in the most difficult moments is the foundation of real power. Most people believe they are rational, that they make decisions based on logic. But in reality, emotions influence nearly everything. People act out of fear, out of pride, out of insecurity. They react to criticism with defensiveness, to discomfort with avoidance, to frustration with anger. They make choices based on how they feel in the moment, rather than what serves them in the long run. This is why so many struggle to stay disciplined. They intend to do what is right, but the moment discomfort appears, emotion takes over. They tell themselves they will push forward, but the moment something upsets them, they lose focus. Their emotions dictate their lives, and until they take control, they will remain stuck in this cycle. Self-control is not about suppressing emotions. It is about mastering them. Those who suppress emotions allow them to build up until they explode. Those who master emotions acknowledge them without becoming consumed by them. They feel anger without being reckless. They feel fear without being paralyzed. They feel doubt without giving up. They do not allow temporary emotions to dictate permanent decisions. This is the key difference between those who thrive and those who sabotage themselves. People who lack self-control often look back with regret. They realize they reacted in ways that harmed them. They let words slip in moments of frustration that damaged relationships. They made impulsive choices that hurt their progress. They allowed a single emotional outburst to create consequences that could not be undone. This is the cost of being controlled by emotion. Every uncontrolled reaction is a moment where power is lost. Every decision made in haste is one that is likely to cause harm. Those who fail to see this truth continue to repeat the same patterns, making the same mistakes, wondering why they never seem to move forward. Mastering self-control means breaking the habit of reacting without thinking. It means learning to pause before responding, to create space between feeling and action. This is the difference between those who remain level-headed under pressure and those who crumble at the slightest challenge. The strongest individuals do not act impulsively. They observe, they assess, and they respond with precision. They do not allow emotions to dictate their choices. They dictate their own actions, regardless of how they feel in the moment. One of the greatest mistakes people make is assuming that emotional reactions are justified simply because they are strong. Just because anger feels overwhelming does not mean it should be acted on. Just because fear feels real does not mean it should dictate choices. Just because discouragement feels heavy does not mean it is a reason to quit. Feelings are not facts. They are temporary states, not permanent truths. Those who allow emotions to control them live in a world dictated by passing impulses. Those who master their emotions live by principles that do not change based on mood or circumstance. Self-control is built through training. It is not something that happens overnight. It requires daily practice, daily awareness, daily refinement. It requires catching oneself in the moments of weakness and choosing discipline over impulse. It requires resisting the urge to react immediately and instead allowing reason to guide action. Those who fail at this remain slaves to their emotions, jumping from one reaction to the next, never truly in control of their own lives. The ability to remain calm under pressure is one of the rarest and most valuable skills a person can develop. Most people panic, overreact, lash out, or retreat at the first sign of discomfort. They allow emotions to consume them, to dictate their tone, their words, their actions. This is why so few ever reach mastery. The ones who do are those who have learned to remain composed even when everything around them is chaotic. They do not respond to provocation with anger. They do not respond to stress with avoidance. They do not allow a single bad moment to ruin an entire day. They move with precision, unaffected by the storms of emotion that control others. The mind is like a battlefield, and every day there is a war between logic and emotion. Those who win this war do not feel less than others. They simply refuse to be ruled by feelings. They know that the ability to stay in control, even when every impulse is screaming for an immediate reaction, is what separates the weak from the strong. This is why they succeed where others fail, not because they never feel anger, fear, or frustration, but because they have trained themselves to act in alignment with their goals, not in response to their emotions. The greatest power is self-mastery. The strongest person in any room is not the loudest, not the most aggressive, not the one who reacts first. It is the one who remains steady, the one who does not flinch under pressure, the one who can control themselves when others lose control. This is why self-control is so rare. It requires patience, awareness, and discipline. It requires resisting the easy path of reacting without thinking and instead choosing to act with purpose. People who cannot control their emotions often blame circumstances for their reactions. They say they had no choice, that they were provoked, that the situation forced them to act a certain way. But this is an illusion. No one can force a person to react in anger. No one can make someone feel fear. No one can control another person's emotions. The only control that exists is self-control. Those who understand this take full responsibility for their reactions. They do not blame others. They do not justify their actions by pointing to external events. They recognize that every response is a choice. This is what gives them true power. The ability to control emotions is what allows people to endure difficulty without breaking. It is what allows them to face criticism without losing confidence. It is what allows them to make clear decisions in the middle of chaos. It is the foundation of true strength. Without it, even the most intelligent person will sabotage themselves. Even the most skilled person will fall apart when challenged. Even the most disciplined person will be derailed by a single moment of weakness. Every time a person gives in to emotional reactions, they reinforce the habit of losing control. Every time they resist the impulse to act on emotion, they strengthen their ability to remain steady. The more this is practiced, the easier it becomes. The person who once reacted with anger learns to remain calm. The person who once avoided difficulty learns to face it. The person who once allowed fear to dictate their choices learns to act in spite of it. Over time, these small victories build into an unshakable foundation of self-mastery. The strongest people in history were not those who never felt emotion. They were those who learned to control it. They did not react blindly. They did not allow temporary feelings to dictate their fate. They remained calm, focused, and deliberate in their actions. This is why they achieved what others could not. They did not allow momentary weakness to determine their long-term success. Self-control is not about suppressing emotion. It is about mastering it. It is about understanding that feelings will always exist, but they do not have to dictate actions. Those who understand this live differently. They do not waste energy on meaningless reactions. They do not allow a single bad moment to define them. They do not sabotage themselves for the sake of temporary relief. They move with purpose, with control, with an awareness that every reaction is a choice. The ability to remain composed, no matter the situation, is the mark of a truly strong mind. Those who master this skill gain an advantage that few ever develop. They are not controlled by the external world. They are not shaken by difficulty. They are not ruled by impulse. They are in control of themselves, and because of that, they remain unshaken, no matter what challenges come their way. Self-control creates stability, but true freedom comes from a mindset that embraces life as an experiment rather than a fixed path. Those who treat life as a destination seek certainty, control, and a rigid sense of success. But this approach leads to frustration. Nothing remains the same. Everything changes, and those who resist change will struggle. The most powerful individuals do not seek permanence. They seek understanding. They do not demand that life unfold in a predictable way. They test, adapt, and refine their approach based on reality. Most people approach life with expectations. They believe that if they follow a set path, success will follow. They assume that if they make the right decisions, they will avoid failure. But this way of thinking is flawed. The world doesn't operate by simple formulas. Even the most careful plans can fail. Even the most disciplined actions can lead to unexpected outcomes. The strongest minds do not try to force reality into their expectations. They observe. They test. They adjust. They do not react emotionally to results. They learn from them. This is why the greatest Stoic habit is viewing life as a hypothesis to be tested rather than a final destination to be reached. It is the mindset that prevents rigidity, reduces anxiety, and builds resilience. A person who treats life as an experiment does not see failure as a personal reflection, but as data. They do not feel defeated when things go wrong. They see an opportunity to refine their approach. They do not resist challenges. They examine them for insight. This mindset is what allows people to remain calm in uncertainty, because they do not expect certainty in the first place. Many struggle because they are attached to a single definition of success. They decide early on what life should look like, and when reality does not align with their vision, they feel lost. They resist change. They blame circumstances. They refuse to adjust. But life does not operate by their expectations. The world is not obligated to meet anyone's demands. Those who refuse to adapt will always suffer. Those who embrace flexibility will always thrive. Rigid thinking is a trap. It makes people believe that there is a right and wrong way to live. It convinces them that once they reach a certain goal, happiness will follow. But this illusion keeps them in a state of constant dissatisfaction. When they achieve one thing, they immediately search for the next. When life does not go according to plan, they panic. They do not realize that peace comes not from reaching a destination, but from learning how to navigate uncertainty without resistance. The Stoics understood that the only constant in life is change. Everything is temporary: success, failure, hardship, ease. Those who seek stability in an unstable world will always be disappointed, but those who treat life as a series of experiments, tests, and adaptations will always find a way forward. They do not cling to the past. They do not fixate on a single outcome. They move forward, adjusting as needed, refining their understanding, and learning from every experience. One of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming that failure is a reflection of their worth. They take setbacks personally. They assume that if something doesn't work, it means they are not capable. But this is a destructive mindset. Failure is not a reflection of identity. It is information. It is a test result. A person who views life as a hypothesis does not see failure as a dead end. They see it as a new piece of knowledge. They do not take it emotionally. They use it strategically. This is what allows them to keep going when others quit. They do not waste energy on self-doubt. They extract the lesson and move forward. The ability to treat life as an experiment reduces fear. Many people hesitate to act because they are afraid of making mistakes. They want to be certain before they take risks. But certainty does not exist. The only way to gain clarity is to take action and observe the results. Those who refuse to act remain trapped in their own minds, overanalyzing, hesitating, delaying. Those who act, who test their ideas in the real world, gain experience. They learn what works and what does not. They refine their understanding and build confidence through action. People who see life as a fixed path often live in frustration. They try to control everything. They resist setbacks. They blame circumstances for their struggles. But the strongest minds do not waste energy on things outside their control. They do not expect life to be predictable. They accept that there will always be variables they cannot influence. Instead of complaining, they adjust. Instead of resisting, they adapt. This is what makes them unshakable. They do not demand that life follow their plans. They learn how to work with reality as it is. A person who embraces the experimental mindset understands that there is no single right way to live. They do not get trapped in comparison because they know that everyone is running their own test. They do not feel pressure to conform because they know that what works for others may not work for them. They do not waste energy on self-judgment because they know that every experience, even the difficult ones, is valuable information. They are constantly refining their perspective, improving their approach, and becoming stronger as a result. Most frustration comes from resisting what is. People assume that life should be different than it is, that things should be easier, that challenges should not exist. But reality does not care about expectations. It moves forward regardless. Those who fight against it only create suffering for themselves. Those who accept it find peace. They do not waste time wishing things were different. They focus on what they can learn and how they can move forward. The ability to adapt is the most powerful skill a person can develop. It prevents them from becoming stuck. It allows them to navigate uncertainty without fear. It keeps them open to new opportunities. Those who resist change will always struggle because they are fighting a battle they cannot win. Those who embrace it will always find a way forward. They do not need perfect conditions to succeed. They do not need certainty to take action. They experiment, they observe, and they refine their approach based on what they learn. The world belongs to those who are willing to test ideas, who are willing to adjust, who are willing to see every experience, good or bad, as valuable data. Those who wait for certainty will always be left behind. They will watch as others take risks, explore and improve while they remain stuck, paralyzed by the fear of making a wrong move. But those who understand that there is no final answer, only ongoing learning, will always move ahead. They do not wait for guarantees. They take action, trusting that even failure will provide insight. Many people believe they need to have everything figured out before they act, but this is an illusion. The strongest minds understand that clarity comes through movement, not through overthinking. They do not sit back, waiting for life to make sense. They engage with it. They ask questions. They try new approaches. They refine their strategies based on real experience. This is how they grow, not through theory, but through action. The ability to treat life as a hypothesis frees people from the pressure of needing to be right all the time. It removes the fear of failure because failure is no longer seen as something to avoid. It is seen as a necessary part of learning. It eliminates the frustration that comes from unmet expectations because there is no rigid expectation in the first place, only a willingness to learn and adjust. Those who master this mindset become unstoppable. They are not afraid to try new things. They do not see difficulty as a sign to quit. They do not let temporary setbacks shake their confidence. They treat life as an ongoing experiment, refining their understanding with each experience. They move forward, always learning, always adapting, always improving. The strongest people are not those who have everything figured out. They are the ones who are willing to test, to adjust, and to grow. They are the ones who do not seek a final destination, but instead embrace the process. They understand that the only failure is refusing to learn. Everything else is just part of the experiment. Growth is not a destination. It is not a finish line that once crossed guarantees success. It is a way of living, an ongoing commitment to challenge, refine, and expand your understanding of yourself and the world around you. The Stoic growth mindset is not about seeking perfection or eliminating difficulty. It is about embracing every challenge as fuel for progress, seeing every failure as a lesson, and understanding that resilience, patience, and discipline are not optional but essential. You now have the tools to reshape how you think about progress. You know that failure is not the enemy, it is the teacher. You understand that risk is not something to be feared, it is something to be managed with wisdom and courage. You have seen how the greatest minds train for excellence, not through shortcuts, but through relentless refinement of their skills and mindset. You have learned to detach from external validation, to break free from self-imposed limits, and to recognize that true confidence is built through action, not empty reassurance. You now see that resilience is far more valuable than talent, that setbacks do not define you unless you let them, and that self-control is the foundation upon which all greatness is built. Perhaps the most important lesson of all is that life is not something to be mastered. It is something to be tested, studied, and adapted to. Viewing life as an experiment rather than a rigid path allows for flexibility, for growth without fear, and for success without attachment to a single outcome. Those who understand this will never feel trapped. They will never be afraid of uncertainty because they will always know how to learn from it. This is your challenge now. Take what you've learned and apply it. Do not just consume this knowledge, live it. Push beyond your comfort zone. Choose long-term growth over short-term gratification. Master your reactions. Stop waiting for perfect conditions and start acting now. Your future self will either thank you for the discipline you built today or regret the chances you let slip away. And now, I want to hear from you. What was the most eye-opening lesson for you? Which principle do you feel will have the biggest impact on your life? Drop a comment below and let's continue the discussion. If you found value in this, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss future insights that will help you grow stronger, wiser, and more unshakable every day. Growth doesn't stop here. Let's keep going.